Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this Wednesday, March 24th meeting of the Tallahassee City Commission. I want to invite those who are willing and able to please stand for the invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Almighty God, we thank you and praise you for the beautiful weather and the opportunity to celebrate springtime in Tallahassee. Thank you for the change of seasons and new life blossoming all around us. Bless the individuals present here today and the homes they represent. Help us focus on the future as we support a high quality of life for all our community. We ask that you grant us wisdom regarding the business that is presented before us today. In your name we pray, amen.
Amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Mr. City Manager, are there any agenda modifications?
Yes, sir. We have two. We had additions of item 5.02 and item 11.02.
Great, thank you. All right. I want to now invite forward for a special presentation for the American Red Cross, Danielle Capel, who is with Relay for Life Florida Division. And as she comes forward, many here today and throughout our community and throughout our country have unfortunately had experience of devastating impacts of cancer. And for this reason, city employees are passionate about supporting the American Cancer Society and their signature event, Relay for Life. It's my pleasure to introduce this year's city champion, Jennifer Porter, with the city's underground utilities and public infrastructure department, who are all going to be leading our city's fight against breast cancer. Will you all join us here at the podium for a special presentation? Anyone else here with underground utilities?
All the so far the department captains that are here to support all their programs.
All right, so can we get those up here? Come on up.
Very much. Mr. Mayor, Mr. Manager, City Commissioners, thank you for acknowledging the kickoff of the City of Tallahassee's Relay for Life season. After spending the last 2 years as the captain of the underground utilities and public infrastructure team, I'm thrilled and honored to be the city champion this year, and that means that I get to work with all the department chairs and also everybody in the city as we join the American Cancer Society in their mission to eradicate cancer. We have just 52 days until our Relay for Life event in May, and we have already started our fundraising activities and our plans for participation in the event. I would like to recognize our department captains who over the last couple weeks have chosen our team name, which this year, in the spirit of the theme of Relay for Life, which is Game Over Cancer, we're going to be the City of Tallahassee Checkmate Cancer. So our entire campaign will be about chess and checkmate and all that kind of stuff. So thank you, department chairs or captains, for your support, and I thank you for being here today. When I started my participation in Relay for Life, I did it because I've lost half of my family, half of my extended family, to various forms of cancer. This year it's a little more personal. My dad, who I thankfully got to see this weekend, is battling bladder cancer. So this year I relay for my dad, and I will fundraise my heart out for him and for everybody who is still fighting this fight and needing support. Before I pass the mic off to Danielle, I wanted to quickly mention a couple of things that we're working on already as we start our fundraising. This Saturday there's a community garage sale at the American Cancer Society office. On April 27th, we'll be hosting the city golf tournament at Heileman. And in the next couple of weeks, we're going to be having an online LuLaRoe clothing sale. So this is all in support of our fundraising efforts, and I hope that people in the city with their big hearts and their help can help support us. I hope also to see everybody at Leon High School on May 13th for the Relay for Life event, which will run from 3 p.m. till midnight. And with that, I'd like to introduce Danielle Capel with the American Cancer Society. She is the community manager and is here to tell us a little bit about Relay in general and some of the activities we have coming up. Thank you.
Hi there, good afternoon. Thank you so much again for having us here this afternoon. My name is Danielle Capel and I am the community manager for Relay for Life of Leon, Havana. First off, I want to start by saying thank you to the city employees, staff, the community as a whole for your support for Relay for Life. You are a critical piece of the success of this event, and we appreciate all that you have done and are going to do. I just want to give you a little bit of background information about what Relay for Life is. So it is the largest fundraising event across the world to end cancer. We have over 5,000 events nationally and internationally. And it was actually started just over 30 years ago by Dr. Gordy Klatt, who was an oncologist in Washington. He solely by himself walked and ran a track for 24 hours straight, and he actually raised $27,000 in that first year for the American Cancer Society. So we have developed and grown a lot since then. There are 3 core components to a Relay for Life event. The first being an opening ceremony where we let our cancer survivors, take the first lap. This is a chance for us to rally around them, celebrate them, and the battle that they've overcome. As the sun starts to set, we take a silent lap as the track is lined with luminaria bags that are purchased either in memory of someone that we've lost or in honor of someone who's still with us. That gives our community a time to reflect and remember those that have been impacted by cancer. And our event finishes with a closing ceremony where we recognize all of the incredible volunteers, teams, sponsors, everyone who's had a hand in making the event a success. The time in between those 3 ceremonies, that is exactly what makes Relay for Life across the globe unique. We pack that time with entertainment, activities, food, fun, lots of things for family-friendly activities going on through the duration of the event. I do want to briefly share with you just a little bit about what the fundraising dollars that we raise, what they do, and how they impact the community. First and foremost, a lot of our fundraising dollars do go to support research efforts. We're never going to be able to cure this horrendous disease without the research. Secondly, we also have many prevention and education efforts. One of our biggest is our cancer prevention study, and we're actually in our 3rd one. With those studies, what we do is we follow around 300,000 people for the duration of their lives. We do extensive history testing on their health, current health status, their family health, and we follow them for the duration of their lives to see if they do develop a cancer diagnosis. That helps us to draw conclusions and formulate certain ideas and opinions about how cancer, is it environmental, is it health, family related, that type of thing. We also have several programs and services that we provide for patients who are going through a cancer diagnosis right now. One of those is our Hope Lodges. Most of you are probably familiar with our Ronald McDonald House and how that program works. We actually have our own version called a Hope Lodge. We have 2 in the state of Florida, and essentially if a patient needs to travel for treatment, they are able to do so with a caregiver and stay there completely free of charge. Those 2 in our state are in Gainesville and Tampa, and we're going to break ground and hopefully have a new one in Jacksonville by next year. And lastly, our fundraising dollars support our advocacy efforts. Because we are a nonprofit, we cannot lobby for government funding, so we have a sister organization called the Cancer Action Network that is able to do that for us. They are the ones who lobby for that government funding and lobby for the passing of certain laws for us as well. So as Jennifer mentioned, we hope that you will join us on May 13th for our event at Leon High School. I hope that, especially if you're a cancer survivor, we'd love for you to come out. We have a free dinner at the event for our cancer survivors, and we'd love to celebrate you at Relay for Life. And I'm going to leave you with a quick video just to kind of sum up the mission of the American Cancer Society and what we're trying to do. Thank you.
Well done. Thank you all very much for that inspiring presentation, and I do hope that members of our community will take full advantage. I've had the pleasure of participating in this walk previously, along with a number of our members of our city family. It's always inspiring, it's always meaningful, and I believe you all may be the single largest Cancer at Large fundraiser that takes place. I now would like to invite up Sharon Tyler, Executive Director for the American Red Cross, my good friend, her board members, and any of the staff who may be here as well. Sharon, are there any folks in particular? Come on up, come on. Right on. Up there. And we've got members of the board who are joining us for this presentation. I've got a proclamation on behalf of the city, and it reads, whereas in Leon County, we have a long history of helping our neighbors in need, and our local chapter of the American Red Cross has been a part of that history for 100 years. The American Red Cross Month is a special time to recognize and thank our heroes, those American Red Cross volunteers and donors who give of their time and resources to help our community members. And whereas these heroes help families find shelter after a home fire, they provide shelter in food in times of disaster like Hurricane Hermine, and we knew that well. They give blood to help trauma victims and cancer patients. They deliver comfort items to military members in the hospital. They use their life-saving skills to save someone from a heart attack, drowning, or choking. They enable children around the globe to be vaccinated against measles and rubella. And whereas the American Red Cross depends on local heroes to deliver help and hope during disaster, we applaud our heroes right here in Leon County, who for the past century have given of themselves to assist their neighbors when they need help and they need a helping hand. Our community, to be more resilient in the face of disaster. And whereas across the country and around the world, the American Red Cross responds to disasters big and small. In fact, every 8 minutes, the organization responds to a community disaster, providing shelter, food, emotional support, and other necessities to support to the military family members, veterans, and their families. Teaches millions of life-saving skills such as lifeguarding and CPR, and through its Restoring Family Links program, connects family members separated by crisis, conflict, and migration. And whereas we dedicate the month of March to all those who support the American Red Cross mission to prevent and alleviate human suffering in the face of emergencies, our community depends on the American Red Cross, which relies on donations of time, money, and blood to fulfill their humanitarian mission. Now, I, Andrew Gillum, I need to know my name, do hereby proclaim March 2017 as American Red Cross Month and encourage all Americans and Tallahasseans to support this organization in its notable humanitarian mission. And I just want to add, parenthetically to this resolution, that I got the opportunity to work extremely closely with Sharon and her soldiers of volunteers during Hurricane Hermine, and frankly in subsequent incidences before and prior to, whether be they house fires, natural disasters, or otherwise. These are folks who opened up our community shelters and housed our seniors, our indigent, our medically needy. They're also the ones who, when folks had food that had spoiled and they weren't sure where the next meal would come from, it was these folks who went around with their food trucks and made hot food items available to members of our community. And that's just what they've done here in the city of Tallahassee. They serve a wide area throughout our state, and we're deeply appreciative and overwhelmingly blessed to have folks who are really doing God's work in our community, and we don't get to say thank you enough. So I hope you all would join me in a well-deserved appreciation to the American Red Cross.
Well, I had about a 10-minute speech planned out, but now I don't have to say anything because our Mayor Gillum said it all for me. So thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Commissioners. We really appreciate the honor. I want to introduce the folks that are with me. Sherry Kishbaugh, our board chair, and on the far right is Donna Simmons, and one of our other board members. And in the middle is Kay Wilkins. She is one of our division staff. She's actually out of New Orleans, and she's our Director of External Relations for our division. So I really appreciate you all, your gratitude, and I would imagine that probably more than half of us in here have been touched by Red Cross services, whether it's a babysitting class, a CPR class, or whether maybe you've experienced a disaster and we've helped you. And so know that when someone from Red Cross reaches out and touches you or helps you, that it's truly a neighbor helping neighbors, and that's what we're all about, and that's what Tallahassee is about as a community. It's a very loving, open community, very inclusive, and we really appreciate our partnership with the city and all that we are able to do together. So thank you all.
Before Sharon leaves, I hope she'll tell y'all where you can go and give your financial support, because if I'm not mistaken, the Red Cross actually doesn't take government money. They're not in the federal budget. Their services are all provided for through the gracious support of members of our community. And so, Sharon, if someone wants to help, what would they do?
Here we go to redcross.org and donate or sign up to volunteer, or both. You know, that would be the ideal thing, is to do both. Or you can always call our chapter or come visit us out. We're out at Tom Brown Park on Easterwood. So thank you.
Thank you again to the Red Cross. All right, Commissioners. Mr. City Manager, I believe we're at the point in the agenda where we hear citizens on agendaed items. Those are the items that are up for commission consideration this evening. If you have an item that is not agended, we do take those speakers at the end of the public meeting. That being said, Mr. Treasurer Clerk, are there any speakers?
Yes, Mayor, we have a number of speakers. Before I call the first speaker, remind or let the folks in attendance know that we set aside at this time 30 minutes of our meeting for citizen comments. We also ask that each of you who's making remarks limit your remarks to 3 minutes or less. There will be a light to the left of the podium when you're speaking that's green and will turn yellow and red, and I'll let you know when 3 minutes have expired. Mr. Mayor, I do have probably 15 or so speakers on agended items. If all were to take the full 3 minutes, somebody would probably be cut off at the end. We might run out of our allotted time. However, if you can make your point in less than 3 minutes, you make room for somebody else coming right behind you. So with that, the first speaker we have is Terry Ryan. And as he approaches, I'll ask him and other speakers, if you'll give your name and address for the record, we will appreciate it. Mr. Ryan is speaking on item 1302, the initiation of the out-of-cycle comp plan amendments. I believe the remainder of the speakers will be on 1301.
Good.
You may begin.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and City Commissioners, and appreciate the opportunity to be here. I'm here representing the Centerville Road Neighborhood Action Network, which consists of the Stonegate, Oak Ridge, Pine Ridge, Centerville Trace, and Shiloh subdivisions. We are right in the immediate area of the new Wallenny Plantation. And here, as we do have a lot of concerns, and we want to just voice a couple of concerns regarding 13.02, and look forward to working with the city staff on this particular item here. In particular, 1302 indicates it's the initiation of out-of-cycle comprehensive plan amendments for Wallenny Critical Area Plan. But when we read it, it indicates to us that the developers of the tow portion, which is near Flashman Road and Centerville Road area, no longer will be required to go through the comprehensive plan amendment process, which provides the opportunity for public input. In order to be allowed to exceed projected number of residential units and projected square footage of non-residential units. No public input. Very concerning. Another item in the proposal is to have additional road access from Flashman Road no longer be limited to 2 roads. We're already concerned with the number of units that are already planned for the residential area and the multifamily. There are 2 plats already approved, one for residential, one for multifamily. Between the 2 of them, we have about 400 units. If each of them have 2 cars each, we're looking at 800 cars. Now, I'm sure each of you are familiar with the Flashman Road, Central Road area. You know that on Flashman Road, we have a new Flashman Connector Road going directly into Wallenny Plantation. Those developments are directly part of that particular road. Now, we all hope, in the last several years, we've been talking about Wallenny Boulevard, putting a good number of cars onto Wallenny Boulevard and then shoot them downtown or whatever. We live out there. All the folks in these subdivisions live out there. We get out on the road every day. It's unfathomable that a large number will not go down Flashman Connector, take a left or right. If you take a right, you go directly to Centerville Road and on to Killarn or down to up in the Killarn area, either way, right or left, or to the Publix Lowe's Shopping Center.
Excuse me, that's 3 minutes.
Pardon me?
That's 3 minutes.
Gotcha. Okay.
Thank you very much for your
Anyway,
time.
we'll be looking forward to the April 5th agenda item, with the planning department, but we just want to make our concerns known right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Mutaki Akbar, followed by Jim Bellamy.
To go toward the end. 13 minutes.
Good afternoon, Mayor Gillum, commissioners, City Manager Fernandez. I'm here speaking on, in regards to the Frenchtown development, the college development that's coming as Agenda 1301. Just to let you know that I'm a 3rd generation, what I call a Frenchtownian. My grandmother, my great aunt, my father was raised there, and I spent a great deal of time in being raised there. Right now, I live in Frenchtown. My business is in Frenchtown. I love Frenchtown. So much that even on the billboard for my business, I say Frenchtown, Tallahassee, and not just Tallahassee, because I wanted to be known where I am, because I think it's important. I think it's important because I know the history of Frenchtown. I know about Ray Charles singing there. I know about the businesses that have been there since the 20s, the 30s, the 40s. I know about all of the professionals that lived in Frenchtown throughout the years. So it concerns me. It concerned me when I heard about this college development that was coming right in the heart of Frenchtown. The problem that I have with this development and the plans for the development is not necessarily with the developers, because this is their job to make money, it's their job to develop. My problem is with the city of Tallahassee and how we as residents found out about this project. I found out by just Mr. Bellamy, who's the Neighborhood Improvement Association president, just called me and told me, hey, did you know that they're about to vote on this in a couple of weeks? And I didn't. We have 6 different properties in Frenchtown, my family does, and we didn't get a post-it, we didn't get a note, we didn't get a letter, we didn't get a smoke signal, we didn't get anything letting us know what was happening in our community. And that's a problem. It's a problem because we pay taxes, it's a problem because we want to have some input on what's happening in our neighborhood, and make sure that the history that I spoke about already and that you all should know about is preserved. Once the word started spreading, I mentioned it to Commissioner Richardson. He eventually got on the line with the Assistant City Attorney. I eventually spoke to the developers and the attorneys with the developers, and I was able to voice my concerns, and they even came to my office, and I was able to show them the black and white pictures that are in my office that shows the history of Frenchtown, from the swimming pool, from the Ashmores, from all of those things that preserve the history of Frenchtown. And so to think that this concrete building is just going to be sitting there and take away from this history. And so my conversations with them was like, okay, is this going to happen whether the city sells this piece of property or not? And they told me yes, whether you all sell the property or not, that is going to happen. So in return, I asked them, well, what can we do to to preserve this history? So they've agreed, and I hope that you all make sure that they do this if you all agree to sell the property. They've agreed to put a memorial in front on the Macomb Street side of the project that would preserve the history of Frenchtown, so we can let them know about Eunice Carter, who's my aunt, who lived there, who had to move because the lake came there. We can let them know about Miss Howard. We can let them know about Strong and Jones. We can let them know about all of the history that's there and make sure that it's preserved.
Excuse me, that's 3 minutes.
Okay. So in essence, I'm hoping that you all put pressure on them to abide by those concessions that are there in order for us to preserve the history of Frenchtown.
Thank you.
Jim Bellamy, followed by Charles Jefferson.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. My name is Jim Bellamy. I live at 532 West Georgia Street, Tallahassee, Florida, in Frenchtown. Born there, as a matter of fact. We have, first of all, I'll take up where Attorney Akbar kind of left off. We were kind of concerned, not kind of concerned, we were very concerned when we found out that this was going to happen, and we were opposed to it because of the process, basically. We didn't know anything about it, and then when we found out about it, it pretty much was a done deal from what we could understand. So we were kind of upset about it. But sometimes there's some good and some bad whenever you start dealing with stuff like this. And one of the things that we have realized now is that we need to develop some kind of mechanism in Frenchtown where we do a plan, a community conservation plan for the community, which outlines what can be used and how it can be used. As old as Frenchtown is, this should have been done years ago. So we need to have those kinds of things in the community, and we need the city's participation to do it. When folks say that we're looking at an RFP, and the RFP said that it's consistent with the CRA plan, well, you know, that's kind of misleading, because I thought the CRA plan basically covered us, but it didn't, because none of us were ever included in the process. None of us were asked our opinions on anything. So really, it really didn't do what we thought it would do. So what we're recommending is that the commission set up a neighborhood conservation kind of work group where we can work together along with city staff to help develop a comprehensive plan that needs to be going into our neighborhoods, so we'll know what goes where and do an overlay for the entire community. Right now, people are kind of upset about it. I'm upset about it, basically, because we are unable to react to this. We have met with the developers, and we talked to them, and I think you may have, do they have the letter, anything yet? Okay, yeah, we sent a letter to the commissioners in reference to what we're asking them in terms of the concession to make, cut off the light.
You got 20 seconds left.
I got 20 seconds left. Well,
10 now.
you know, the only thing I can say is that, hey, Frenchtown has a lot to offer the community, and I always say that if one of us is not doing well, none of us are doing well. And we need to work together, create a better town, a better city for the people that live in the city. And I'll tell y'all this because I say it all the time. When
That
I
is
pay
3
my
minutes.
taxes, they don't give me no discount. I pay just as much as anybody else. And I'm looking to have the same kind of services that anybody else has in my community. Y'all will cut me off.
The next speaker is Charles Jefferson, and then Cheryl Collier-Brown.
To Mayor Gillum, the commissioners, good afternoon. My name is Charles Jefferson. Up until a year ago, I lived in the Frenchtown area. I still have property in the Frenchtown area. Today, I want to speak on the sale of the property from the perspective of the positions I held during the very initial process of the city purchasing property and the planning for revitalization in Frenchtown. I was the vice president and president of the Frenchtown Neighborhood Improvement Association at that time called FENA. The neighborhood, and we facilitated meetings between the city, the neighborhood, and most importantly, the owners of all properties involved, including Carter House, Strong Park, and where the Renaissance Center now is. All parties worked together to effect change and revitalization of the Frenchtown area. All parties recognized the importance of maintaining some fabric and texture of the Frenchtown community and business district. There were many meetings, many participants, including the universities. Dr. Dale Lick, former president of FSU, attended a meeting, promised that FSU, the institution, would not encroach across Brevard Street on the business district and resident. Dr. Dozier, FAMU School of Architect and Engineering, with students from 2 or 3 other universities, did a two-day charade doing plans and suggestions of revitalization for the area. Why is this parcel so important? Well, let me tell you why. This parcel, the parcel where the Renaissance Center now stands, were the integral parts in the heart of the integrity of Frenchtown. It was integral parts of the promise and covenant between the city, the neighborhood, and property owners. As a member of the Housing Development Corporation, I told someone in a meeting, if you asked to go to Frenchtown, they would take you to the 400 block and put you out. We are talking about the heart of Frenchtown. Never, 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 ever would we have supported the envision or support the development that is being proposed for the 400 block at this point. Without any doubt whatsoever, unequivocally, this proposal would have been DOA, dead on arrival. The hopes, dreams, and aspirations of those who were before us depend upon your vote today. This proposal or this sale, it may not be DOA or dead on arrival now, but by your vote, you can make it DBV, dead by vote. Thank you for your opportunity, and let us work together.
Cheryl Collier-Brown. And then next will be Darrell Scott.
Good afternoon. Cheryl Collier-Brown, 217 West Brevard Street, 32301. If you listen to my address, it is not in Frenchtown, but Frenchtown is in my heart. I'm not going to take up my 3 minutes. All I'm going to do is piggyback on what Attorney Akbar, Mr. Bellamy has stated. My main concern is that we were not made aware of this proposed project. You all have emphasized that you wanted us to be involved, be a citizen advocate. I have friends saying, why are you running up there? Why are you all involved in this? They're going to do what they want to do anyway. So right now, I'm under the impression, well, maybe they may have a point, but that has not stopped me and will not stop me from speaking up about something that's my main concern. Frenchtown is what we believe in and what we want, and I'm just upset to know that you all are even considering putting student housing in the heart of Frenchtown. We have enough student housing down there already. We need something that's going to revitalize that area, not knocking student housing. Don't get me wrong. But right there in that area, in the heart of Frenchtown, you should be ashamed of yourself for not making us aware of what's going on. We didn't find out about this until the February CRA meeting. And then some people looked at us like, what are they talking about? So all I'm asking is that you consider, not only for us, for all these other communities in this neighborhood, in this city. It's beginning to feel like we, the citizens of Tallahassee, has no voice until maybe we go to the booth and vote. Thank you.
Next speaker is Darrell Scott. Darrell Scott, and then Vinette Gadelia.
Okay, Darrell Scott, 613 Dunn Street. They told me somebody was going to bring this box up. I'm just turn it around and show you we have 570 petitions in this box. Got a lot to say, short time. Can't read all of this because it's 1:33 minutes. Anyway, my connection to Frenchtown is, and always has been, my sense of place. It's not a sign. A sign says you are here, and here's what's around you. A sense of place, biographical. I was born there. I live there. My children are there. It's a relationship that develops over time. Time that brought me back to Tallahassee, to Frenchtown. It's spiritual. I'm emotional. No, I'm downright mad because I never expected this. I thought that that piece of property would be developed for the use of the community. Student housing. They asked me, well, speak on encroachment. If you had a dictionary that was updated last week and you looked up encroachment, how about they give you the definition, which is, well, you know what encroachment means. Anyway, they'd use it in a sentence, and they'd have a picture of the standard. That's encroachment. You know, you're coming on what to us is a historic piece of property where our history came from. You know, I can tell you all of the stores that were in that block from I think I went back to 1930 till it disappeared. I can give you all of that. I'm a historian, and right now I got angry, and I didn't want to do that. I didn't, but I read so much, and I feel like I'm at an auction from years back, and my child, my friend, is being sold. I can't do nothing. I feel helpless. I lost that sense of place. I lost that reason I came back to Frenchtown. Ever since I've been here, we've been fighting for something. It's been a constant fight. I'm 69 years old. I don't know how much fight I got left, but I got a lot of mouth. I didn't expect this. I did not expect, you know, that's all I can say about that. But I want to leave you with something, because at the end of the day, if this sale goes through, please do not refer to the area as historic Frenchtown. Don't insult us like that. Just say Frenchtown. And if you do your memorial, please put it in Frenchtown. You put one in Smoky Hollow. you need to go back and put an arrow that points across the street, because it's in the wrong place. There's a quote that I like. It says, "We will not go quietly into the night. We will not vanish without a fight." Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker?
Vanette Gadelia, and then following this speaker will be Eddie Bass.
Thanks, Commissioners. My name is Vanette Gadelia. I am an attorney at the firm Hopping Green and Sam's, 119 South Monroe Street, just a couple of blocks from here, and I'm here representing Landmark Properties. I have with me Jason Dornbus and Andrew Costas, along with other consultants who have been working. The meetings that you heard referenced with the neighborhoods have been held by myself, Eddie Bass, Pete Gonzalez, and by the developer over the past several weeks. So we're here asking you to approve a contract for us to purchase a 0.8-acre surplus parcel off Macomb Street. But I want to give you a little bit of perspective about how we got here. I'm a development lawyer. I'm a land use lawyer. This is what I do. And what I do is I have someone ask me whether a project concept is consistent with the regulations that a local government has in place. And so here I did exactly that. I evaluated what your regulations since the late 1990s have said about the parcel we're asking to purchase and the other 4.08 acres that we have under contract. And I was happy to be able to say that your regulations over the past several decades ask for this type of development to happen in this location, and that the concept behind that is the edge of the community towards Tennessee Street is the appropriate place to put urban densities to allow the remainder of the community to remain formed, that you don't have that push, the encroachment, the pressure of densities moving that way. And in addition, that you then have property values that go up, tax increment financing that you can then apply to the renovation and the redevelopment of those communities. And so this project does that. We absolutely understand the passion that we're hearing here today, but I think you have a document that speaks to how you see this all working together, and we have been working hard with the community. Eddie will talk a little bit about the concessions we've made to talk about
I'm sorry. We're going to keep order. I appreciate
exactly the concessions that we're willing to make sure the history and the context is preserved, and that you allow a development that will increase the property value and therefore provide the financing that you need to do the redevelopment of the remainder of the project. So we meet the criteria for approval of this contract by your experience. Landmark Properties has that, financially capable. We have that as well. The plan to development is consistent with your regulations, and a project schedule that means we will move quickly to complete this project and to integrate ourselves with this neighborhood. So I respectfully stand as an advocate for Landmark, as the right partner to bring this to fruition after 2 decades. And the result will be a top-notch project we can all be proud of. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is...
Keep order, guys. Please. That's not how we conduct.
Next speaker is Eddie Bass.
Eddie Bass.
Followed by John Williams.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, good afternoon. Eddie Bass, 805 North Gadsden Street. I'm here representing Landmark Properties. I've been working with them for going on 2 months now. About 3 weeks ago now, we submitted a pre-submittal to the City of Tallahassee Growth Management Department, in which all of your staff, various departments, participate in. At that meeting, we were told that there were significant neighborhood concerns. We decided that we needed to hear those concerns. My client initially felt that they had met all of the obligations of the zoning categories, which technically they have. However, there's additional concerns there that we felt we needed to address. As part of that, we have staff's worked diligently to basically be a bridge between us and the concerned citizens. Mr. Bellamy, Mr. Akbar, and others took on a proactive role and met individually with us at different times. I personally enjoyed the most meeting with Mr. Akbar simply because of the historical opportunities he had in his office to view. Once we got out of that meeting, that's where the idea of a historical display marker, covered pavilion, something of that effect, being at the corner of Macomb and Virginia Streets. What that is to be, we don't know. I'm a civil engineer. I'm not that creative, but we've got a lot of creative folks that work for you guys, as well as some folks in the Frenchtown community that have specific input. And Mr. Akbar has committed to helping us with photographs and the historical presence there. Then we went and met with Mr. Bellamy and Miss Annie Harris. And out of that meeting, we came up with the idea that we needed to simply shift the building due west. We shifted the entire building over 20 feet from the additional 10 we already had. We now have over 40 feet, plus or minus 40 feet, along the frontage of Macomb that is going to be dedicated and designed as an open-air plaza, pavilion, what we don't know. Once again, it's a work in progress. We're going on week 3 right now. But we have worked with the neighbors, and we will continue to do so. With that 40-foot shift of the city parcel, 0.85 acre parcel that they're purchasing, over 40% of it now is dedicated to retail space, including the space internal to the building itself. So I feel that my clients made significant concessions. There's additional asks by the neighbors, and we're continuing to work with them to consider those. Thanks.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Next speaker is John Williams, then Rodney Landers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. My name is John Williams. I'm with Williams & Associates. We represent landmark properties across the country, and they are the purchaser for the 0.87 acres on Macomb Street. Landmark is a vertically integrated development company that manages the entitlement process, the building process, and the management process of the units that they put on the ground. They're the most active student multifamily developer in the country at this time. We've worked with them in over 40 states, and they've delivered projects in more than 17 states in cities like Athens and Gainesville, Florida, and Baton Rouge. They delivered and managed over 15,000 beds of product across the country, so they're very well versed in building and managing quality projects. All the projects that Landmark delivers has professional on-site management, employs local people, and they have strict rules and regulations and community policies. They have extensive landscaping and amenity areas and have won multiple awards for their project, both the construction, design, and amenity and recreation packages. They have quality, maintenance-free construction. Landmark works very well with staff and the surrounding neighbors. This is the second project we've actually worked with Eddie on here locally in Tallahassee, but we believe we've got a good project team, we've got a good architect, and Landmark will continue to work the relationships with the city staff as well as the neighborhood to develop this as a quality project and fit within the community's comp plan and vision for the community. We're already, as Eddie said, we have been working with the neighbors and reached conclusions that the historical marker in the plaza area would be the most beneficial, and it has already been added to the plan. So I'll be happy to answer any questions later on at the appropriate time if there is such, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Next speaker is Rodney Landers, and then Joe Berg.
Mr. Mayor, members of the dais, I don't have any solutions here today. I only have a couple of admonitions to you. This isn't about bricks and sticks. This is about heritage and hope. This is about realness. This is about thousands and hundreds of years of concern living in the Frenchtown area, and I won't use my time to tell you about the 67 years I've been there. I'll use my time to say to you that these people who've gathered here before you are here to ask you to discount the word on this agenda, which is approval. You don't have to do this today, okay? You can consider this and concern yourselves with this based on the information that you're hearing now from citizens of this community. Yes, they may have had an opportunity to go online and see that you were having meetings. They didn't do that. But are you going to tell them it's too late now? Is that what you're going to do? Many of you went to meetings last month of Black Heritage, Black History Month. And you went to schools and you sat on this dais and you told us about diversity and this, that, and the other. This is your opportunity to keep that promise, okay? This is your opportunity to say to us, we meant what we said last month about diversity and black heritage and black history. You don't have to do this now. And Mr. Mayor, to you, it is my understanding in the media, as others have known, that you have aspirations beyond this room. I would suggest to you and ask you, sir, to lead not in West Palm Beach and Dade County. Lead 3 blocks from your office. Lead here right now.
Next speaker is Joe Berg.
Duly noted.
Joe Berg is the next speaker, and then following him will be Stephen Martin.
Lady and gentlemen, my name is Joe Berg. I'm the president of the All Saints District Community Association. We're here in solidarity with our neighbors in Frenchtown. Passions are a little hot, so I'd like to put some cold water on everything and reset the conversation a little bit. When it comes to this parcel, it is not our yard, so we don't render an opinion. But in all cases of development, and this is the way the process is structured, we believe it should not be a jump ball between the neighborhood's desires and development. We believe it should always err towards the neighborhood and that the burden of the argument should be on the city and developers. And there are some policy changes that could be made to that end. However, in this particular case, it is zoned for this. And I know that from our experience in Frenchtown, the color of the flame will attract the right kind of moth. So the overlay plan that has been circulated, the Frenchtown in 50, I believe is an excellent solution for a 50-year plan, because when you say this is what we want, those developers come. The main strip in Frenchtown, in All Saints, after we came before you with a similar issue in 2015, attracted a $2 million investment from someone who said that's the kind of neighborhood I want to invest in. And they were unknown before we made the case. The overlay would be a specific solution. As I understand it, the Design and Urban Planning Department of FSU has agreed to fully support that plan, the Frenchtown in 50. And particularly, there's one doctor who I won't single out or speak for, who has experience in Cleveland, Detroit, I believe Milwaukee, and Seattle, where they did this exact same thing. And once they did that, to the table came $150 million from a foundation, came developers, came investment, because they said, this is what we're going to do. To do a small-scale development in Frenchtown is a risk right now, because the city has said, we're going big. And here's another point, just for everyone in the room to understand. The number is 50,000 more people are coming in 30 years. We have to figure out where to stack them. At that pace, we have to put a block this size in, worth of housing, every 9 months for 30 years, or the cost of housing is going to go up. The city is not, in my experience, just riding through with a bulldozer saying build, build, build. They have a challenge, and staff has been directed. And coming to the table reasonably has benefited us. We have gotten, without the benefit of an overlay, excellent relationships with the city, staff departments, and the commission. And that has resulted in a permanent All Saints. So we support the neighborhood's concerns. We encourage you to support an overlay. And finally, when these processes happen in cities where neighborhoods are brought at the beginning of the process always, the outcome is something everyone supports, and those become the most sustainable neighborhoods. They survive.
Your 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Stephen Martin, speaking on item 1302, Mr. Mayor.
I came in last year. This isn't the same bag of trash. It's from the same place. You remember last day I came in and spoke, this has to do with the development on Milani Plantation. I brought a bag of trash in there that I'd gone out and collected just walking where these people are doing their work. I went out 2 Sundays ago. I picked that up, and I could have picked a lot more up than that. They are trashing this land in more ways than one. Now, so much of what I've heard tonight with Frenchtown reminds me of what's going on with Wallon. People were kept out of this. Secrecy, lack of transparency. Mr. Ryan and his group, they don't even realize what's going there, and they've been following this. I think he said, how many homes? 800 or something? That's just that parcel of it. There's going to be 3,000 plus homes there. Now, I heard somebody say about keeping promises. I've done a lot of research on this, but many questions I can't get answered. And you know there's commissioners who refuse to speak to me about it. But I've got a letter here that says, back in 1989, the City Commission approved development of an agreement with Walani Plantation. The owner's commitment to undertake comprehensive development plan approved by local government consistent with the city's comprehensive plan. So they promised, or they at least appeared to want to stick to the comprehensive plan. Now they're asking for amendments to it. And as Mr. Ryan said, one of the amendments is they don't want to have to go through any comprehensive plan amendment procedures in the future, so that this is on the toe part, so that citizens won't be able to have much of a say about it. And it's no secret. Developers are happier when the citizens don't get involved, just like I'm sure these developers in Frenchtown would be, and there's a lot of attempts to keep the citizens out, and I think the planning department contributes to that. Then, because of the potential impact, the developer intends, this was written back at the 1990, the developer intends to undergo development of regional impact process. Well, they filled out an application, and they got turned down. Department of Community Affairs, who that had to go through. This is their response to the city. Both the city and county have been advised that inclusion of Walani Plantation site within urban service area boundary at this time would create problems, which will leave the department no alternative but to find adopted plan not in compliance with requirements of Chapter 163, Part 2. Department suggested that this site be designated as rural land use at an appropriate rural density outside urban service area boundary until conversion of this land for an urban use was timely and appropriate. Against the department's cautions, the Walani Plantation site was included within the urban service area boundary in the adopted plan. This is one of the reasons for the department's finding that the adopted plan was found not in compliance. You would have assumed they would have gone back and revised their plan. But the planning department stepped in and said, we can turn this into a PUD and we don't have to go through Department of Community Affairs.
Excuse me, that's your 3 minutes.
The planning department helped them avoid dealing with a Department of Community Affairs that pays attention to the public. And the planning department is interested in developers, not the public.
Mr. Mayor, the next speaker is Dale Landry. At that point, we'll be at that 30-minute mark. There are some additional speakers, but
thank you.
Leave it at that. Mr. Landry?
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, and City Manager. As I sat back preparing remarks, I sat back and I was listening, and I want to speak from a different perspective. As I heard Mr. Jefferson made his comment, there are some covenants that have been made from way back in the past. When they started developing downtown, this area, there were covenants made with people over there that had homes. And I've heard numerous times of these covenants where the city had said they were going to make opportunity for businesses to be put back over in Frenchtown. Right. Now, there's a reality that we all need to accept. And I've accepted this one as being president of the Tallahassee branch of the NAACP, where I've had the honor of leading in this community. But I'm not from Tallahassee. I'm from Panama City. And many of you here that serve, I don't think can claim Tallahassee as your first homes. But I've done everything I could to help the people here based on where I came from. Though I did not grow up and get to enjoy Frenchtown as many people shared with me when I got here in 1994 after retiring from 21 years in the United States Army. But I remember the era. Because back in this heyday, and again, and that was in some of the good times in the 50s and the 60s, there were some other great cities like that. Pensacola had Cervantes and Palafox. Panama City, where I'm from, had Glenwood. You get here, and you have Frenchtown. And it reminds me, and I sit back and think about another great city that I've been to when I was up in Washington, D.C., and they had another major historical black community called Anacostia. Anacostia is gone. They packed everybody up and moved them over to Prince George County. And they went and developed that downtown part of Anacostia, that black history, and made it condos for all of the elite moving into the district. As I sit here and I was listening and I was thinking about the covenants that had been made, what came to my mind was just to share this thought. A city commission predating you made a commitment that they did not fulfill. And you all, the city commissioners, have had to clean up behind city commissions of the past long ago. A lot of things they've done. A lot of history they've let go. Do not let the history of Frenchtown disappear. Do not lose it on your watch. And I thank you for the time, and I thank you, Mr. City.
Thank
but
you.
I just want to share that.
Thank you. We'll take the remaining. Thank you.
We will next hear Ernest Farrell and then Curtis Taylor.
Thank you. I'm glad you had a few more minutes because I got to get back down to Frenchtown. To our commissioners and to Governor Gilbert,
Get out of here.
Mayor. I am really concerned about the process, and also I'm concerned the fact that I've been in this community for 73 years. I have an office, the Urban League, in the Frenchtown community. I have a church that I've been pastoring in the Frenchtown community for 25 years. I have a small business in the Frenchtown community. And the process is somewhat different because as I read and I see the process in the neighborhoods and how we have the hearings and we have people to come out and get an opportunity to express themselves. And the fact that this didn't happen, it would be inappropriate for this commission tonight to make a decision on property that's going to faster become high-rise community. We already have one on the just on the far end, 5 stories, and now you can't even get into Frenchtown that you're going to run into 5 more stories. So we don't need that. Another critical part of this whole process is that the property value is going to go up in the neighborhood, and people are not going to be able to afford to even pay their taxes. This is a critical issue, and I hope that this commission tonight will reconsider. It's okay to have a monument. We can have a monument without having a building. We should have a monument there anyway because of the significance and the historical value of this property. This property is so valuable in terms of the historical value that it has on the families in this community. People live here. Families who lived and died in this community who have made an impact on this community. And for this commission tonight, I think would be a terrible thing for y'all to decide to sell this property, get the $400,000 and put them in the community and redevelop it and come up with a plan to do something for the area that's going to really give historical value to that land. And I would hope tonight, as a representative of this community for long standing, that you would really not consider selling this property tonight, and that the developer can use the other end of the property. They can build, just don't bother that front part there. And if you want to put all those houses up, that's fine. I mean, students got to live somewhere. We have a lot of students in our family. We're not kicking that at all, but we just want to tell you tonight that please do not make that decision just on a consent. And I'm also concerned about the fact that you gave 30 minutes for an issue of this magnitude. That's just unconscionable. I can't believe that the people every one of y'all, I voted for every one of y'all because I love you guys. Don't change please do something positive tonight that's going to make a difference in this community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
And just before you start, Curtis, Pastor, every speaker who completed a form is going to be heard this evening, so just want to make that clear. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor and City Commissioners. I'm Curtis Taylor. I've worked at the Urban League for 40 years in Frenchtown, and as you can see tonight, we love Frenchtown. We love Frenchtown. When I came here in 1972 to go to FAMU and play ball at FAMU, the Mighty Rattlers, after practice one day, we said, where did you go for some action? Everybody said, go to Frenchtown. We walked to Frenchtown. When we topped that hill by Carl Street, Little St. Mary, and we looked down on Frenchtown, it was so many people in Frenchtown that literally you could not see the ground. Look at Frenchtown today. You would not know that at one time there was over 100 businesses in Frenchtown, restaurants, grocery stores, gas station, hospital. We had everything, some of the best food in Tallahassee. So what do we tell our children today that once upon a time, like this was some fairy tale, that we had a great black business center in Frenchtown that was destroyed for development, student housing. And I still have to say today, commissioners, if we can get it on Gaines Street, we ought to be to get it on Macomb Street. If we can build a Renaissance Center, we ought to be to build something on Macomb Street that represents Frenchtown that we all can be proud of. If we can do Cascade Park, we can do Macomb Street. If we can do FAMU Way, we can do Macomb Street. Thank you.
Next speaker is Janice Cooper. Janice Cooper, and then Fred Flowers.
Jim, Fred is the last one.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Janice Cooper, and I was born and raised in Miami, Florida, and made my way to this lovely city of Tallahassee by attending Florida A&M University. And by attending my wonderful HBCU, I was able to learn the historical values of Frenchtown through my mentors, friends, and family that live and still live there to this day. And now I am advocating for my students because I am a teacher. Majority of my students are residents and their families of Frenchtown. This is just not a selling point. This is not just dumping grounds. This is where my students have grown and lived. This is this is the only thing that they know. I don't want Frenchtown to become the next Smoky Hollow at all. It's a historical value, and I want to remain a historical value, not something like the gentleman before me said, a fairy tale. Nothing historical, nothing African American should become a historical fairy tale. It should remain what it is, the pride of Tallahassee. And just because I never lived there doesn't mean I don't share that pride. I love Tallahassee. I love it so much. I bought my first house here. So I want to continue to help build Tallahassee to what it should be, not by diminishing the neighborhoods that so many have grown up in, but helping continue to grow it. So instead of thinking to drop something so valuable and turning it into something you think will deem more reasonable, let's help rebuild it so that as a full community, we can be proud of the historical value that Frenchtown has. Thank you.
Fred Flowers, and Mayor, I continue to receive additional forms. I'll let you provide direction as to whether we want to continue to receive them or take the ones that we have at this point. And then
I just clarified this.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, please. I just clarified this with you. Go ahead, please. Call the speaker.
Mr. Flowers?
Yes, I'll dispense with a lot of the introductories because the time is short, but I am Fred Flowers, address 2073 Summer Lake Drive, Suite 151. I'm here, even though I'm a lawyer, I'm not here representing anyone. I'm here on my own accord because I grew up in Frenchtown at 1222 Ford Street that intersects Macomb Street. We would walk from home through Good Bread Lane to Lincoln High School where we played football, basketball, and baseball. So I have this strong sentimental attachment to the Frenchtown area. And I've noticed that the commissioners speak with great pride about the development of the Cascade Park, and rightly so, the Gaines Street corridor development, Midtown, rightly so. But when it comes to Frenchtown, Frenchtown is treated like a stepchild. Over and over again. I remember 20 years ago, and was really upsetting to me, and most of you were not on the commission, but 20 years ago when the city started this redevelopment process, a development group approached the city about developing the same piece of land, and they were told no. And so the question is, where is the redevelopment plan for Frenchtown? Where's the comprehensive plan for Frenchtown? It's just one broken promise after another. There's a bigger issue here, though, because public money, public taxpayers' money, was used to acquire this particular piece of property. And when that was done, what was the public told, what was the community told then? That we were acquiring this property later to be used to stimulate redevelopment of Frenchtown. That group was told no. Now, a few years later, this issue is back before the City Commission. The City Commission can keep the promises that were broken. You might not know anything about it, but you cannot, or at least you should not, agree to sell this property that's on Macomb Street. That's the gateway to the community. What's the rush? What is the rush? All these people at present say they have not had an opportunity to receive input. Where's the redevelopment plan? What's going to happen to the demolished site on the corner of Tennessee and Macomb? Is there a plan for that? So it seems to be a hodgepodge redevelopment effort that's not done in any other parts of the community. And so all we're asking for is some uniform plan to be developed that be a guide, a footprint for future development, so we will not have this herky-jerky action. Apparently the horse is already out of the barn on this massive student redevelopment, student development. So it looks like Frenchtown is beginning to transition into a student housing project for Florida State University. All of this is contrary to all of the promises the city made when they acquired the private property, created the pond in Frenchtown, all this public money used for supposedly a public purpose. So my question to the commission is, how can you use public taxpayers' money to acquire this land and then turn around and sell it to a private developer for a huge profit?
Excuse me, that's your 3 minutes.
That is contrary to everything this community
Attorney.
has been told over and over. There is no rush. Let the development proceed, apparently, but the city does not have to participate in what is a charade of broken promises to the Frenchtown community.
Thank you very much. Just 1 second. I know that our legislative team has to get back across the street. So, Dustin, you want to come and introduce the legislative item, and then we'll pick up with the remaining 2 speakers. Your introduction, Ron, Raina, and company.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. We have our lobbying team. I know that they're going over back to the Capitol to deal with some issues, so I'll just hand it right over to them.
Mayor, members of the commission, thank you very much. And to the audience, we apologize. We did not mean to do this. We were on the front end of the agenda, got stuck across the street and came back over. But we have good news for all of you. Because at the end of the day, Mayor, here's the good news. The good news is the legislature is likely to be in town for a really long time, and it's all about economic vitality of the community. Just sort of in jest, I mean, it's obviously a lot of things going on. And so thank you for the opportunity. You know, it's no secret that we're supposed to go across the street and be parochial and selfish on behalf of the citizens of your community. So thank you. We're doing our best to do that. There were 1,205, and I say, Mr. Mayor, through you to Commissioner Richardson, I don't know, Curtis, if in the time you were across the street, you ever saw 1,205 projects proposed as special projects totaling almost $2.5 billion in requests. As each of you know, there are 4 projects that the city has requested. We are going to be reliant on the Senate to put our projects in the budget. There are a number of reasons for that. but we're going to be reliant on the Senate to do that. Budget process is moving along. We expect the spreadsheets to be put out by both the House and the Senate sometime in the next 5 or 6 days. We will get a pretty good feel for where we are. As each of you know, the rules are a little bit different this year in how the budget process is working. Number one, if you're submitting something in the House, you have to have submitted a 9-page form which turned into a standalone bill. Each of the 4 projects you have are in play in that a standalone bill was filed. In the Senate, each of those 4 projects had to have a set of forms submitted, did not become a bill in the Senate. Your 4 projects are alive in the Senate. Simply put, either of the houses can put your items in the budget and you remain alive in conference because all 4 are alive in one way, shape, or form in both houses. On the issues that you care about substantively, let me zero in on the one that every city and every county government in the state cares about, and that's House Bill 17. It's a bill by Representative Randy Fine from Brevard County, which is a pure preemption bill. For those of you who had an opportunity to attend the League of Cities visit yesterday, where Senator Latvala visited, I think that that his message from the Florida Senate was the House of Representatives could do what they want on House Bill 17. That was not a bill he looked like the Senate would end up taking up or entertaining in any meaningful form or fashion. Lots of folks are interested in the CRA legislation. I would, if you haven't looked at the CRA bill, I will simply say to you, the future of CRAs in Florida are not great for new ones. I think that those that do not have projects, bless you, those that don't have projects in the pipeline now, getting ready to be put out before this legislation potentially goes into effect, should it pass, would be wise to begin to look at those projects very quickly. I don't know, Mr. Mayor, members of the commission, through the manager, and the city attorney, whether or not we have anything pending, but I will simply say to you, that is a process, in my opinion, from a CRA review, overhaul, amendment perspective. The future of CRAs in Florida are going to change, and either they are going to be significantly reduced in ability to do the things that have been done by many CRAs around the state, not necessarily in our community, but I can tell you that I'm not sure that, assuming the bill passes, that is pending. It is a bill by Senator Lee and a bill by Representative Jake Rayburn. But if the bill ultimately passes, I don't believe the legislature is done at the end of this session with CRAs, Mayor. I think that again, the ability of what CRAs were adopted to do, the authorization to adopt by local government CRAs, I think that if you look at some of the reports, some of the stories, including the civil grand jury report out of Miami-Dade County, there are a lot of beliefs that that CRAs have not operated as originally intended, that projects have been undertaken, monies have been expended by many CRAs to do things other than renovate slum and blighted communities, even through the expansions of the definitions historically of what is defined as slum and blighted, and what and how and where you could expand and grow and build upon your CRAs have gone beyond what folks had anticipated. But I think you've got to look at that as an issue of some concern. There are other issues, Mayor, that we could talk about. Jasmine is here from Pittman Law Group. John Wayne Smith is here from Bill Peebles' firm. Ronna Brown, who's here from my firm, is also here. I think I might be best if I simply stop and open for questions. But let me be clear about one thing. You're going to continue to read a lot back and forth between the Florida House and the governor. You're going to continue to hear stories about where the Senate is lined up as it relates to their position on the issues that the Florida House and the governor continue to spar about. And whether those issues are Visit Florida, or those issues are Enterprise Florida, or those issues are other economic development related policy decisions, I would urge that the city refrain from getting engaged in it because there's no upside to it from our political perspective or our ability to get things done on behalf of the city. Mayor, I would be glad to take questions from you or any member of the commission or the manager or the city attorney if you so like.
Thank you, Ron. Commissioner Miller.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Book, thank you for the update. I did go with the League of Cities with a wonderful team of folks from the Northwest Florida League of Cities yesterday, and I will tell you that they had plenty of great stories to tell about their performance of their CRAs, and the fact that everyone in the whole state should suffer from whatever offense that some CRA somewhere in South Florida did is just unbelievable to me. The stories I heard myself while we were visiting these folks yesterday was the stories from the other parts of just the rest of the Panhandle, specifically Pensacola, Gulf Breeze, that entire area, were phenomenal successes, achieving exactly the results that these tools were intended to produce. One of the unfortunate encounters we had with one of the aides with Senator Lee, one of the members of our group asked him if he knew what a TIF was, and he said no. Now, this is the aide to the sponsor of the Senate bill who does not know what a TIF is. That's pretty sad, and I just would like to hope that you will make sure that actually Senator Lee knows. There's I've heard people refer to a CRA as corporate welfare, when in fact, what happens is that you designate an area where the actual improvements are paid for by the people who come and make improvements on the property, that they are the ones, it is their future tax liability that goes into that CRA and produces the money that it makes it possible to do public sector improvements like lighting and sidewalks. And that brings me to my final concern, which is the fact that these things are rear end loaded. You start out with the baseline value of the property that has been determined to be blighted. Then that's built upon, and the development has to be attracted. That takes a couple of years. They're 30 years long for a reason. They come in, and I'm probably telling you things you don't know, but maybe others don't know it. Point is that the developer comes in, then he takes a year or two to build, and then he takes a year or two before he actually gets on the tax roll, and the money begins to come in. So it's 15 to 20 years into the life of the CRA before there's really a lot of money to do public sector improvements. That's exactly where we are with one of our CRAs. And to put an end to that at that point in the life of a CRA is insane. Because all those improvements now, instead of coming from his tax dollars, this guy from out of town who came here and built this product, instead of that, then everybody else in the community, will be transferring that tax load to the taxpayers of the community away from this person. And for that to be, I don't think that they have made that loop, for one thing, at least not from talking to them yesterday. I didn't get that impression.
Mr. Mayor, can I respond? Commissioner, I promise you I know what a TIF is. I promise you
I'm sure
I
you
know
do.
you know that I do. And I understand why and how CRAs respond. I will say one thing to you. It isn't only the South Florida CRAs that have been problematic from a legislative review perspective.
Order, please, sir.
I'm not going to get drawn into whether or not there are or aren't issues in Tallahassee. I think that the purposes of which your CRA has been put in place for economic development purposes are exactly why the statute was put in place from an intent perspective. So I'm not going to get drawn into that debate. But there are some CRAs in the Panhandle, and I'm most notably one that was criticized a number of years ago, not in the last 24 or 36 months, is over in Bay County. I think what the legislature is intending to do, what the House intended to do, was go way out here to the right and then see where they land in a negotiated set of of discussions with the Florida Senate. I can't answer why someone from Senator Lee's staff did not know what a TIF was. My bet is that Senator Lee does. He is a developer in the Hillsborough County, Pinellas County area. But I'm stopping by to see him tomorrow anyway, and I will make sure that I have that conversation with him. I say to the folks in the audience that moan and groan about CRAs, I would simply add that without a CRA or a series of CRAs in this community, I'm not sure that the economic vitality and the redevelopment that has occurred here would be where it is today. I've been in this community. While I live in South Florida, I have a home here as well, and I've been in this town for 45 years. I may not have lived or grown up in Frenchtown, but I've watched all of the growth and all of the economic vitality in this community. And I think one of the things that people across the street don't always remember, Commissioner, and it's part of the problem of term limits, is they don't always understand that over half the property in our community are off the tax rolls. Between the state government and the colleges and the universities and the religious and not-for-profit entities that don't end up on the tax rolls. If we don't do things like CRAs for economic development purposes, we would be a very, very poor community today. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Ziffer.
Just a quick comment. This is directed towards the members in the audience. Just to give you an idea of what we're talking about, the CRA basically paid for the shelter land so that the folks that were homeless, that were causing all sorts of problems in the Frenchtown, historic Frenchtown area, are no longer there. And the CRA therefore did benefit Frenchtown a great deal. What happens on that property remains to be seen. So if you think that it was valuable for the shelter to move out of Frenchtown, I suggest you reach out to any one of us and make a call to your legislator and let them know that we need to keep our CRAs. Because the other part to this is everything you're talking about in CRAs, that's where we'll get the money to make the improvements you want to see in Frenchtown. And so without that ability to finance like that, it's going to make it more difficult for us to do what you want. And we want to do, I think we'll have that discussion shortly, a lot of the things you want to see.
Any additional, Commissioner Miller?
Well, I'm sorry I have another question. It's related to House Bill 7063. That's the one that tells us that we basically can't generate any revenue. Just to put it in a fiscal responsibility, I think is kind of the title of the thing. I have a tremendous amount of concern with that, and I just want to make sure you follow that. One thing that people aren't talking about as much is that the way that it limits bonding will probably result in just about every municipal utility having to be transferred to the private sector. Now that piece kind of didn't fit with the thinking on the rest of the items in the bill. And I'm suspicious, I guess would be the word, that somehow, I mean, that purely benefits private utility interests. So I have a concern about that limitation on your ability to bond, because you cannot run utilities without the ability to do long-term bonding.
Mr. Mayor, through you.
Please.
I am assuming that you guys and gals are all getting our reports. 7063, I believe, is on page 4 or 5 of this past week's report. Okay. We will continue to report to you on 7063. We understand the city's concern with 7063. We share your concern from a policy perspective. I believe that's the position of the Florida House. I'm not sure that the Senate subscribes to the same position.
All right, thank you.
Great. Thank you all. Godspeed. Good luck.
Mayor, Commissioners, thank you again for the opportunity, and to the manager and the city attorney and to Dustin, thanks for the continued opportunity on behalf of all three firms.
Great. Thank you very much. There was one name that was called to present. The remaining came in after the 30-minute mark, and we'll move those to the second public comment part of the agenda. So the one that you announced before.
Fred Flowers, I don't know that I had announced, but the next one was
Okay.
Edward Hollifield. I think I had,
okay, we'll move
given
those.
you that name. So.
All right, Commissioners, we're now at the point for discussion on the approval of the, well, nope, we're going to go back. I'm sorry. This will be the presentation from Appalachia Regional. Appalachia Regional
Planning Council.
Planning Council.
While he's setting up, I'd like to, if I could just say, under the heading of introduction, all of us sit on various committees and councils as representatives of this government and representing the interests of Tallahassee. This happens to be one that I sit on, and Chris Retail here is our executive director. He has been doing a lot of presenting to the group itself, and at the last meeting, it occurred to me, or a couple of meetings ago, it occurred to me that it would be helpful for you all to get that particular presentation because because first of all, you're represented on this council, and what does it actually do? So I've invited him to come in and present a little bit of information about the Planning Council to you tonight.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. As Commissioner Miller said, my name is Chris Retail. I'm the Executive Director of the Appalachia Regional Planning Council. And on a much more lighthearted subject, I'm simply here just to give you a little information on our organization. We were created in 1977, August 23rd, 1977. We were created by interlocal agreement. And this was some legislation that passed that allowed local governments to form regional entities for a number of reasons. Shortly after that, in 1980, we were written into state statute by the Regional Planning Council Act. They gave us specific responsibilities, mostly focused on growth management. It was mentioned earlier in the meeting, developments of regional impact. The regional planning councils were the facilitators of that process when it was still alive. But some of the things that came out of the Regional Planning Council Act, most importantly, was our governance structure. And essentially what we are is a 9-county organization that serves the 28 municipalities as well as those 9 local governments. And our governance structure is a county elected official, a municipal elected official, and then we have gubernatorial appointees. The governor appoints members to our council board from our 9 local governments. The counties are actually parties to the interlocal agreement, and the counties allow the municipality to submit a name to represent one municipality in each county. We also have our state partners as ex officio members on our board. We have DEP, Department of Environmental Protection, Department of Transportation. We've got the Water Management District. And we also have the Department of Economic Opportunity. Just wanted to go over some key points of the act, and I kind of, did I skip a slide? Yeah, I started with historical background. Just to give you, I really just wanted to talk about who we are and what we do, and I'll try to keep this as brief as I can. I'm not going to read the entire slide, but some of the reasons that we were created essentially were to provide technical assistance to our member local governments. We sort of view ourselves as an extension of your staff. You know, the city has a very talented planning department, excellent staff, but again, keep in mind we're looking at things through a regional lens. We're trying to, when the statute was actually created as far as developed for regional planning councils, they wanted an organization that would step back from not a municipal boundary or not a county boundary, but more of a regional perspective. And when we were created, if you remember back in the 80s, that's when the growth was rampant in the state of Florida. So we had our growth management responsibilities. We were facilitators of the development of regional impact process, and we were leaning heavy on the planning side. Over the years, our responsibilities have evolved. The DRR process has been all but eliminated, and which has allowed us to focus on some of the other things that we do. Primarily, we do 5 things now: economic development, transportation, emergency preparedness, quality of life, which is more environmental planning, community development, and we are a regional convener. And I'm just going to go over real briefly a couple of things under these 5 focus areas. Economic development has been mentioned a lot at today's meeting. We do a lot of economic development, and when I say this, this is all, we're just providing technical assistance in these areas. We're not out recruiting businesses. We're more on the back end providing some tools and resources related to economic development. we have a comprehensive economic development strategy that the U.S. Department of Commerce Economic Development Administration approves for us, and it's essentially a list of regional projects. Again, everything that we're doing, we're doing things at the regional level. In our SEDS is a list of regional economic development projects that are, if they're on that list, are eligible to receive potentially infrastructure funding from the Economic Development Administrations. And we're beginning to rework our SEDS and update our SEDS actually this month. So we work a lot with our local economic development organizations within our 9-county region. We also provide some econometric modeling assistance through a software program that we have called REMI. And we try to do a lot of the things that the services that we provide, we try to do as a governmental entity. We're not, we're a not-for-profit entity. We're trying to save our member local governments money, so we do it at a very small cost. We do post-disaster redevelopment planning. We actually helped write the city and county's post-disaster redevelopment plan several years ago. And most importantly, we have a revolving loan fund program. It's an RLF program. And it helps small businesses that are looking to create or retain jobs. We give, if they have to have a business plan and we have to have the funding, right now we're kind of maxed out on our portfolio, but we provide small businesses small loans to help them stay in town or to expand their business. And we actually just updated our plan so that we now are allowed to give loans in the city of Tallahassee and Leon County, because before the loan program was primarily focused in rural areas.
Chris, could you just give the folks in the audience who, maybe there may be some budding entrepreneurs here. I think one of the things I wanted to stress about your coming here tonight was to make the commission and the community aware of the fact that these are small loans. These are small businesses. And so if you could, budding businesses, if you could name a few of the ones and
Sure.
talk a little more.
And as Commissioner Miller said, these are small loans. We try to stay in the range of $25,000 to $50,000. Our entire portfolio is around $550,000, and we have the majority of that loaned out, and we're actually working to try to expand that loan program because there's so many opportunities for small businesses. These are businesses that have been turned down by a commercial lender. So we're not trying to compete with the private sector. These are a little bit more high-risk loans than the typical loan that a commercial lender would do. So a lot of times we'll actually work with the private sector and the banks. If they've got someone that's just under the threshold, they'll turn them over to us. But we have tons of success stories with our revolving loan fund program. One of the more recent loans that we've done is in Wakulla County. There's a big focus on oyster aquaculture. We have a couple graduates from the Wakulla Environmental Institute's oyster aquaculture program where they're actually farming oysters out in the bay. But they needed a loan to help purchase some equipment to expand their operations. We gave them a $50,000 line of credit to help do that. We had another person from Liberty County who she was kind of a fashion designer for children's clothing, and Zulily, the popular website that many folks are familiar with, wanted her to do a line, and she just did not have the resources herself to do that. But through a small business loan from us for $25,000, she was able to make the order. So we've got a bunch of those stories. Our website also provides some additional information on that loan program, but it's a very popular program with our council.
Thank you.
Just briefly, I know I'm running out of time here. Transportation, again, another regional issue. When the regional planning councils were created, on the first slide that you saw, there's actually 10 regional planning councils. We have obviously 10 regional offices. We can work with the state, and they can house folks in our regional planning council offices to help administer some of the programs. The Transportation Disadvantage Program is one of those programs. We also work with the Capital Regional Transportation Planning Agency. I'm a non-voting member on the CRTPA. And then some of the more interesting projects that we do, regional projects, we're working on a freight and logistics zone project for 4 of the counties in our region. And this relates to the port of Port St. Joe in Gulf County. As it comes back online, we're working to help rail infrastructure and some of the properties along that rail be well positioned for when that port is redeveloped, which is in the near future. Again, something that will impact this region. The port over in Gulf County, Tallahassee and Leon County will see impacts from that. We're all kind of connected here. Emergency preparedness, we do a lot as far as emergency preparedness. Just briefly, though, we house another state position. It's the local emergency planning committee staff person, and I used to actually have this particular job. And essentially, what you're tasked with doing is providing hazardous materials training, planning, exercises, and outreach to your 9-county membership. And we provided, actually, the City of Tallahassee Fire Department receives the bulk of the funding for the training funds that we receive each year for hazmat training. We do a lot of emergency management planning, exercises, and outreach. We also, each regional planning council is responsible for updating the statewide regional evacuation study. And this is a very large document that's compiled and uses state-of-the-art information to determine where surge will occur from approaching hurricanes. And from that information, your emergency management office or director can then decide where your evacuation zones are. So this is another regional project that we're involved with and we're happy to help out with. And I'll just keep moving along here. Quality of life, again, I kind of mentioned this is our environmental planning / community planning. We do a lot in this area we've actually grown this program significantly in the last couple of years. A lot of what we're doing now, especially is with the Apalachicola River and Bay. A lot of you have heard probably about the collapse of the Bay and the water wars that are currently going on. We house a coordinator for a 6-county stakeholders coalition. It's Riparian County Stakeholder Coalition. It's the 6 counties on either side of the Apalachicola River that are stakeholders that are, obviously have a vested interest in restoring that river and the freshwater flow from Georgia down to that bay, especially when you look at Apalachicola and how their entire economy is based on harvesting oysters from what is now a collapsing bay. And it's not just the oysters. A large population of the finfish that have a juvenile lifespan in that bay before they move into the Gulf. So we're really involved with that. We're actually updating the Apalachicola River and Bay Swim Update. It's the Surface Water Improvement Management Plan, which is a very big document that will identify projects that will help the water quality in that particular area. Another more interesting project that we're working on is the Chattahoochee to Bristol Trail Feasibility Study. This is a study that will look at developing a hiking trail along the east coast of the Apalachicola River from Chattahoochee to Bristol, and this comes into ecotourism. And if any of you have ever been to Toria State Park and done some of the hiking along the Apalachicola River, it's probably it's got the most terrain of any hiking trail that you'll probably do in Florida. So there's a ton of potential there. It will link two small towns in our region together and hopefully provide an ecotourism boost for those communities. The last thing I want to mention is just our regional convening role. We look at a couple of those roles include our federal clearinghouse review, any federal grants that come in through our 9-county region, including our 28 municipalities. We're a review agency. We look at how those grants may impact the region, and we provide comments on that. We do dispute resolution for local governments that may have an issue that they need kind of a mediator to help with. And then a lot of what we do happens at our board meetings. We meet every other month, and when you have 9 counties and 9 municipalities and 9 gubernatorial appointees and some of our state partners coming together, we talk local issues, we talk regional issues, and then from there our board can determine how staff can best assist some of those issues. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have, and thank you for having me.
Great. Thank you very much. And Commissioner Miller, thank you.
No, I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
Move consent.
Commissioners, there's a motion and a second to move consent. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Motion passes unanimously. Commissioner Miller, we're now on to item 11.02.
Right.
I believe
thank you,
that's...
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to ask Pepper Eugenio to come up to the podium so that he can answer any questions that I leave you with after I present on my own. First of all, I'm just going to read our agenda item because that really explains it as well as anything. Increasing the frequency of this, the name of this organization is, and you're going to need to come over here, Peter. The name of the organization here is Resiliency Florida, and its intent is to begin to address the extreme weather events and the storm levels, and actually to try to kick off the conversation past where it's been able to get before up to this point. A lot of times everyone gets wrapped around the concept of whether or not the situation is based on a human generated condition, and then everybody starts arguing about that, and nobody gets to the point where you really need to think about the fact that all the evidence is presented shows us that there is a rising sea level, and Florida is extremely vulnerable. In addition to that, thanks to the storm in the fall and then the storm we had in January, and those are just recent examples of extreme storms that we're having in this area that are impacting us, and that happens all over Florida. So Resiliency Florida is putting together their board. I'll let Peter describe a little bit more about that to you. They've invited the city to be the city in this quadrant of Florida that is to sit on the board, and I'll let you add anything that I left out that you think everyone needs to know.
Thank you, Commissioner Miller. Good afternoon. Actually, it's probably more like evening now. My name is Pepper Uccino. I am currently sitting on the interim board of Resiliency Florida. We are a nonprofit organized under 501c4 of the IRS code, which is a social welfare organization. The purpose of the organization is to bring the public and private sectors together to begin the conversation, to begin planning, so as developments go forward, that we plan for resiliency in the future so that we're not caught with our feet wet, so to speak, down the road. Our organization is not to address why our feet are getting wet, it's just to address the planning and mitigation and adaptation strategies for the events that will likely continue to occur with more frequency and more tenacity, especially in Florida along our coast and inland. As Commissioner Miller has stated, we are putting together our first founding board, and I did approach Commissioner Miller to sit on the board as the member of the city of Tallahassee. The board will be split into roughly 4 quadrants in Florida. There will have to be 1 county member from the board and 1 municipal member of the board. The way our bylaws are structured, those 2 seats cannot go to a unified governmental position. So it could not be a member from Leon and a member from the city of Tallahassee, because we want geographical diversity from both inland and coastal counties. That is basically the purpose of what Resiliency Florida is trying to do, and we would love to have the city of Tallahassee. In fact, the city of Tallahassee is the first city in this Northwest Florida quadrant that we approached to sit on the board. So
that's great.
I'm happy to answer any questions.
Excellent. Commissioners, any questions?
There is a financial impact of $2,000 a year.
Are you making a motion?
Not yet. I actually will, but I sort of like have a self-interest because it's my item and I want to do this. But by our being in this particular board, I really feel that this organization is going to be able to keep us apprised of the most recent information on this topic from all angles, and expose us to people from other parts of the state and hear about the problems they're encountering and so on. So I'm extremely concerned that we are not talking about this and a couple of other things that really take 20 years to plan for. So I'm asking that you concur, and I'll make the motion that we do join this board as a member.
With you as the representative delegate.
That would be nice.
I'll
Thank
certainly
you.
second that.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you so much. We're so excited to have the city of Tallahassee as a representative in our organization.
Absolutely.
Just so you know, I'm going to probably have Pepper come again under that item, like where we are the RPC, to give you updates periodically on the progress that's made. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Commissioners, we are now at the point of introduction of ordinances. City Attorney.
Mayor Commissioner, item number 12.01 is the introduction of ordinance number 17-0-02. It's the first and only public hearing for this item is scheduled for April 26, 2014. The title of this ordinance is an ordinance of the City of Tallahassee, Florida, amending Chapter 6 of the Charter of the City of Tallahassee to annex within the corporate limit of the City of Tallahassee, Florida, upon the adoption of said ordinance, property being situated in Leon County, Florida, in accordance with the voluntary annexation provision of Section 71.044 Florida statutes. Again, this is a voluntary annexation ordinance, and the only public hearing will be set for April 26. Item number 12.02 is ordinance 17-0-09. The first and only public hearing for this particular ordinance will also be scheduled for April 26, both at 6 p.m. in the City of Tallahassee City Commission chambers. The title of this ordinance, 17-0-09, is an ordinance of the City of Tallahassee, Florida, amending Section 20-170 of the Code of General Ordinances of the City of Tallahassee relating to trespass towing prohibition, penalties, prohibiting towing for certain specified period from alcoholic beverage establishments, removing criminal penalties from the ordinance, providing for conflict, severability, and an effective date. Again, this ordinance will be subject to a public hearing on April 26 at 6 p.m., and that will be the first and only public ordinance on that. If I could have those two items deemed admitted.
Show them introduced without any objection. All right, Commissioners, we're now at the point of item 11.02. I don't know if we have public hearing speakers.
You said 11.02. That was.
I'm sorry, 13. No.
1301.
01. 1501.
1501. Gotcha. There are no speakers on 1501. I do have a speaker on 1502, but on the first public hearing, I do not have a.
Okay, Commissioners, on item 15.01,
acceptance.
There's a motion.
Second.
And a second to approve this resolution. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, no. Motion passes unanimously.
Mayor, item 1501 is the final public hearing and vote on the ordinance.
Right.
So let me read into the record the title of that ordinance. It's an ordinance, City of Tallahassee, Florida, amending Chapter 9 of the Code of General Ordinances of the City of Tallahassee, adding Section 9-3, which prohibit oil and gas well stimulation for the purposes of resource extraction, otherwise known as fracking, and the storage and/or disposal of well stimulation operations waste within the incorporated areas of the City of Tallahassee, providing for definitions, conflict, and severability. Again, the record needs to show that this is the time for public hearing on this, that no one wishes to speak, and the commission approved.
Great, thank you. Absolutely. Item 15.02.
Mr. City Attorney, we do have a speaker. If you need to do anything before that.
Yeah, let's have our public hearing on 1502.
Okay, 1502. The only speaker we have, Mayor, is William Gedice.
Bill.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to have a few moments to speak on behalf of this item. I'm William A. Gedice. I'm the Chief Financial Officer at Tallahassee Memorial Healthcare. And I'm here tonight to unequivocally support the Substation 12 Reliability Project. We are sensitive to the concerns and share the concerns of our neighborhood, those two being two primary issues: what the project looks like. It's very hard to hide a box. We think that's a little bit better looking than the substation that sits on the corner. And the other primary issue is one of sound. We have met with the city staff. And so that you know, we actually, our skilled nursing facility sits about 175 to 200 feet from the middle of the project. We have office buildings that sit approximately 150 feet from the project. And we are satisfied that your staff has done an outstanding job taking into account abatement of noise such that we are not concerned that we will have a good project. We think it's important to bring reliability to Substation 12. It serves the entire neighborhood, not just the hospital. Obviously, we're very interested in making sure that our power doesn't fail during any storms. And so we're just here in support of the project, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
No other speakers.
Thank you. City Attorney?
Mr. Mayor, this is a Site D plan approval, Type D site plan. We don't frequently have those. We're under the code, we're required to bring those back to the commission to have a public hearing. So at this point, the item is up for approval.
Great. Commissioners?
Move acceptance.
There's a motion.
Second.
And a second to approve. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Motion passes unanimously. That concludes our public hearing. We're now back up to item 13.01.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Commissioners, this item requests your approval of the sale of less than 1 acre on Macomb Street to the Standard at Tallahassee LLC in the amount of $485,000 and authorizes me to execute documents related to this transaction. The city parcel is one of 11 properties already assembled for a multifamily project consisting of 265 planned dwelling units. This is an allowed use under the CU 45 and PUD zonings on these parcels. Real Estate Management recommends approval of the sale to the Standard at Tallahassee for $485,000. Cherie Bryant and Judy Donahoe are here to offer a brief presentation and to answer any questions.
Good evening,
Bree?
Commissioners, and also good evening to everyone who's come to speak and also listen to the discussion on this particular item. Listening to the speakers, what I wanted to do is just summarize what I felt, what I've heard is some of the biggest things. One, of course, is the early coordination that people wanted to be involved in the process earlier. Another big one is some uncertainty and trepidation over the size of the project, the number of people that could be coming in as a result of it, and in the area as a whole. And then, truly, as it sounds, a mourning of the loss of the older neighborhood commercial that used to be in this area and on this parcel. What I'd like to do is, and I intend to touch on all of those in the next couple of minutes. What I think we have going on here is that everyone has a desire. It's always been a long desire for the planning department, as a result of the city commission policies, to bring back more retail in the downtown, to bring back that neighborhood retail. But the forces are different than they were 80 years ago or 100 years ago. To bring it back, sometimes it's a tricky issue, is pulling together the financing and the market. So the solution for bringing that forward is going to be a blending of those forces from the past with the forces of the current of the present. One of those forces, and I have to thank Joe Berg for bringing it up when he's the president of All Saints neighborhood. Thank him for bringing up the challenge that it's over 60,000 people that are expected to come into the city, grow in the city over the next 30 years, and trying to find a place for all of those people. Short of taking out miles and miles of the rural and agricultural lands outside of the city, the policies, longstanding policies in the comp plan have been to support infill. That's a challenge. There's no doubt about that. That's a challenge, blending that force from the past with the present. That force of the present with the past. But as in many cases, a challenge is also an opportunity. And to do that thoughtfully and sensitively is really the goal of what a lot of what we do in the planning department. Just as a good example, that neighborhood commercial, that neighborhood grocery store, the market for that, based on reports that I've come across from the Urban Land Institute, you need an average of about 20 units per acre to justify, to start justifying that neighborhood grocery store. The more people you have in that walking distance of about a quarter mile or so, the more people you can have in that, the more robust of a commercial area you can have. It's not up there, but the same thing, many people, we talk about traffic and having more people come into the city adds more traffic. There's a tipping point where you get enough people in the area where it actually starts making sense to run the bus every 10 minutes or to put in even something better than that. That's also around 20 or 30 units per acre. So that's a way to capture, where that challenge for dealing with the population growth becomes a positive thing if done so respectfully. What I'd like to do is switch a little bit, and I'll come back to hit on those 3 points that I mentioned earlier. But I want to switch a little bit because a lot of Joe pointed out there's a lot of passion in the room, and that passion is not just on the side of the neighborhood, it's also on the side of, I think, everyone in the room. And a beautiful example, a very positive example of that recently has been the Better Block project that occurred last October, and it has actually had positive ramifications moving forward. And that the purpose of Better Block, it was from the Knight Foundation. We deal with KCCI locally through the Knight Foundation, but we were able to obtain a $25,000 grant to just recreate that corner on Brevard and Macomb for a weekend and see what could this corner in Frenchtown be in the future? What vibrancy could we see in the future? Just for a little while, but to get people to imagine. And it turned out to be an extremely successful project. And no short thanks to Devin Levins from our office, who spent I don't know how many nights and weekends working and building, working with the neighborhood. We had a stage. We had some pop-up shops on site. More music. Music is working its way to be a very important feature of the Frenchtown area. And all of these things on a sustainable basis take people living in the area. The zoning, let me go back, I pressed too far. Someone earlier, had mentioned that the zoning in this area, it supports this right now. When the developer was looking at doing their due diligence, they saw that the appropriate zoning was already there to have this type of housing. We don't specify in our code what type of housing. We don't say that it has to be a mixture of different students or other families, but it simply gives a density going forward. What we do show, and I know there's concern that this type of magnitude of growth would continue further into the neighborhood, but there is an intentional step down starting from Tennessee Street, then back to Virginia, and then it steps down to what is the block here, which we're looking at, and it steps down even further as you get into the neighborhood. There was a recognition when this zoning was put in place decades ago that we needed to focus things there on Tennessee Street and Macomb Street and then step down as we go into the neighborhood, because that gives you the best places for your retail along those major commercial areas, the more marketable spaces, but then steps down as you move into the neighborhood, recognizing that historic fabric. The site that we're talking about today, just to make certain that everybody's aware, that's the red site, that's the city parcel. The rest of the block in the yellow and the blue, those are under private ownership. Just really quickly, the city one is vacant. The student housing, this is the student housing that's currently on that yellow block that I showed you, and then this is the funeral home, which is on the further west end of the parcel. Just to give a little bit of idea of what the proposed development would look like, it is higher intensity. These are the type of development that, these are examples that the company has done in other places. Again, this is the type of density that is really, when you talk about having that neighborhood retail and you talk about having that activity at street level, and you talk about having the bus service increase to the point that people don't really need cars as much. This is the type of density that we talk about. The two go hand in hand. So, Earlier, we discussed the fact that that staff has been working as a liaison between the developer and some of the leaders in the neighborhood. Some of the top requests that have come out from the neighborhood is the retail on Macomb Street frontage. That, of course, is very important, as you've gotten from the comments earlier. A floor plan that lends to a family structure rather than just the students. Recognizing that the way the units are laid out can affect who's going to be interested in renting it. And then another big one that you heard earlier, that the neighborhood would like to be informed earlier when there's city property sales or anything affecting that. Before I move forward on that point, I've talked with someone from the Community Redevelopment Agency, and going forth, we're in the process of creating something to help that very point. When a new development or request or rezoning comes in, when we put that into the computer database, and there are triggers that come up to show if it's in floodplains or things like that. What we're adding is a trigger to show if it's in the community redevelopment area, and then that'll show on the agendas, and then someone from the CRA, Sheila, is going to be tracking that, and so she can then take that first step when we know those things are going forward and reach out to the neighborhood.
Yeah, Cherie, what notice was given for this project? I heard that people said nobody was notified. What notice was given?
What I'll do is we're going to hand that over to.
Order,
We're going to
please.
hand it over to Judy, but there was notice of several meetings that was put out, public notice of several meetings, and Judy is here to answer some of those process questions, and I'll hand that over to her in just a minute. But there was public notice on a couple of occasions going back through the last part of last year.
Okay.
Cherie, since Commissioner Richardson asked that, why don't we just let Judy
Sure.
talk
Well, I can
right now,
tell you very quickly.
but she can do it too. It doesn't
Sure.
matter, but I think,
Sure.
go ahead.
I'll let Judy just step in.
I mean, you
and
don't
do
have to walk away. Just let her come up and answer the question.
Look into my slides?
Sure,
Okay, thank
absolutely.
you.
There.
Thank you, Sheree. Good evening, Mr. City Manager, thank you, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. I'd like to go over a little bit about the process as well as the terms of the purchase and sale agreement. The purchase and sale agreement is for $485,000, which you've heard, and that equates to $12.80 a square foot. It is just under 1 acre. It's 0.87 acres, 37,897 square feet. There are contingencies in the purchase and sale agreement. It is contingent upon the site plan approval, so the city will be very involved in the development of the site plan and how.
Judy, the question was about what notice have been given.
Okay. I apologize.
Judy, we'll come back to that. If you can go to the notice and then circle back.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, the surplus property sales process, it is prescribed in the real estate policy number 136, and we have followed the policy, as well as we added a step or two with this particular time. Back in July of 2016, we had an unsolicited offer to sell the property, and that came from Landmark Properties. All the city departments were contacted to determine if there is a city need, and in this case there was not. Therefore, it was declared surplus. The city manager was advised of the possibility of the pending sale, and we had approval to move forward. In September of 2016, we sent notices of the pending consideration of the sale to all property owners within 500 feet of the Macomb Street property. There was actually 72 letters sent out. Also in September of 2016, we noticed of the proposed sale in the Tallahassee Democrat as well as on talgov.com. In October of
Judy, continue, please. Just
go
continue.
ahead.
Sure. In 2016, we came to the City Commission to ask their approval to release a request for proposals, also known as an RFP, for the sale of the property.
Judy, is that the standard process, that the request for proposal would come after an offer had been made on the property?
That is one of the ways it can happen. We can.
Okay, we're going to wait. Just one second. Listen. We've had the public comment. The positions in the room are pretty well known. We're trying to establish some baseline facts that I think everybody in the room can appreciate. So if we could hold down on the back and forth, that'd be much appreciated, both by staff but also by the commission. Please.
Thank you. There is actually two ways it can happen, Mr. Mayor. The first way is that we take a look at our inventory of land every year, and we make the evaluation as to whether or not we should send it out to the departments to see if there's a future use. And we generally identify 4 to 5 parcels each year by that method. The policy also allows for unsolicited offers to sell, and that's what this was. So
and when it's unsolicited, we then approved an RFP to go out to see if anyone had an interest on the land to make a proposal for either purchase or an idea, or just the purchase?
Just the purchase.
Got it.
Yes, and in this case, we did get 2 bids, and well, just backing up just a bit, this RFP was not based just on price. We also had other criteria included, and there was price and terms, of course, but we also looked at the buyer experience, their financial capability, and plan development and their schedule. And on all of those points, Landmark scored extremely high.
Judy, I'm sorry, just another follow-up. At any point, was the Frenchtown Community Redevelopment Plan ever taken into consideration? Was there ever an interface with the CRA itself?
Yes, the CRA was represented on our ranking panel. That was Roxanne Manning, who was the executive director. She was on our ranking panel, and she certainly had some input as to the consistency and compliance with the redevelopment plan.
Thank you. Next.
And, Mr. Mayor, and Judy, other than the letters that went out, did you get any responses from any of those letters that were sent out?
There were 2 responses, Commissioner, and one of the responses was a request to do a grocery store, and frankly, I'd have to look to see what the other one was, but it was not in favor of the sale.
Okay, so of the 72 letters that went out notifying property owners within 500 feet of the proposed development, you got 2 responses.
That is correct.
And one was for a grocery store in the area.
That is correct.
Was there any other effort to reach out to the community, the neighborhood association, the business association, to get input?
No, sir.
Okay.
Judy, you want to go ahead and Dr. Hollyfield, if we could just keep order, that'd be great. If you could back up now to the terms of the sale so the commission could ask questions.
I didn't realize it was going to be this much trouble, actually, when I asked you to come up. I did want to proceed in a timely manner, and since that point was asked, I wanted to address it right then. And then probably we should hand it back to Cherie.
If we could go, since you started on the sale, do that, and then Cherie, if you could back up to the rest of the presentation. Please. Judy.
Okay, thank you. Again, the terms of the purchase and sale agreement were for $485,000 or $12.80 a square foot for just under 1 acre of land. There are contingencies built in the purchase and sale agreement. We are under contract, but we are not on the verge of closing. There are still quite a few contingencies, as well as the buyer's due diligence and their ability to obtain permits. In other words, the buyer may decide 6 months from now that this site is not suitable, in which case we do not close. And we also have, as I mentioned, site plan approval. There were 2 appraisals on the property, and one was for $425,000. The other was for $475,000. We're looking at an average sale price, or average value for the property of $450,000, which is $35,000 under the appraised value.
No, $35,000.
Under the sale.
Under the sales price, excuse me. Okay.
Any questions on any of the transaction piece? Thank you, Judy. Cherie.
Sure. one thing that I wanted to point out too, that back in the latter part of the year, Judy's correct that the letters were sent out, but I want to highlight that over the last few weeks, staff has been working very closely with the developer and also with the several people in the neighborhood to come up with some of the additional requests or agreements that were referred to by Mr. Akbar at the beginning. One of those, as I mentioned, the desire for additional retail, additional space on the ground floor, and that, as you see, that was something that was very important during the Better Block weekend, and then the shop owners, these pop-up, just creating this small pop-up place out of plywood and hanging lights. They ended up, I understand, having some pretty good sales that weekend. I bring that up because one of the things that was asked for and agreed to by the developer over the last few weeks in those discussions with the neighborhood was the plaza area across the entire Macomb Street frontage of about of 30 feet. The parcel's about 100 feet deep, the one that's being considered for sale, and about 30 feet. That will include hookups and places for additional pop-up retail, and those vendor spaces will, again, haven't been designed yet, but they'll be working with design staff. Additionally, 2,000 square feet of retail on Macomb Street at that northeast corner is something that the developers agreed to. When we did the Better Block exercise, temporarily we used some temporary paint and just drew bike lanes in the area. It turned out that many of the people who came to participate in the event used those bike lanes. As a result, one of the additional requests from the neighborhood was to add those additional facilities permanently, and the developer has agreed to work with the Public Works, the city engineer to do that, both going north and south to add bicycle lanes to make it easier for people to get there both by bike as well as walking and car. You also heard earlier about the Frenchtown historical display on the south area on Monroe Street, and that's something again that the developers said we'll be working through the details with the community should everything move forward as planned. And I believe at that point we've backtracked to the point where we've covered everything. So I'd be happy to answer questions, as would Judy. Have any?
Great. Thank you. Commissioners, we're now at the time of any questions to staff on this item.
I've got a comment.
Sure, Commissioner.
Commissioners, we're going to be voting, I guess, shortly on this sale of the property. Before we do that, though, I am going to make a suggestion, regardless what happens with that. I'm not sure who does this. I think it might be helpful if one of us participated, but I am going to take a page from some information that was sent to me by one of y'all. And I do want to say that through all of this, two people that I've relied on for conversation that I've had talked with, Jim Bellamy and Annie Harris, because they have been engaged, particularly with me, going way back, long before we decided to move forward with the shelter purchase, with the Kansas property building, and so I rely a great deal on them. So you are very well represented by their desire to do the right thing. Having said that, I am going to suggest that whatever happens on this sale, that we do put a pause button per se, and we're going to use that button again. I think like we've used that in the last couple of meetings, on anything further in the area, particularly when it comes to anything that has to do with our properties, and look at what do we need to do here to make it right, as has been suggested us today. So, no, don't do that. Don't do that, because we haven't done anything yet. And we won't know what that is until after a couple years of whether this is successful or not. Because quite frankly, we haven't had a whole lot of people interested in doing development in Frenchtown. But we know that with the shelter gone, that has made a difference in at least interest. I do take a little bit of issue with, no, I'm not going to do that. Anyways, I want us to put a pause button to perhaps identify one of us to work with, and I'm going to suggest Annie and Jim, and there may be others, to develop a plan that can come back within 30, 45 days to this commission on what's this going to look like, how do we put it together, and what do we have to bring to bear. I've asked the city manager to compile a list of properties that we have, because the city does have other properties in the Frenchtown area, to talk about, put those on the table, because there's a need for more housing. There's a need for affordable housing in that area. And I'm not talking about high-rise housing, I'm talking about single-family. There's also a need for commercial. We've got some properties that might be available for commercial, because there are things that we can do that I think we probably or could have maybe done a better job with. So I'm going to suggest, regardless what happens with the sale, whether it happens or not, that we do that. So if there's any more conversation on that, then I'm going to make a motion on something.
Commissioner Richardson, followed by Commissioner Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, let me put my comments in context, because I, too, have a very personal relationship with Frenchtown. My uncle and aunt owned a commercial business in Frenchtown for years. They lived on Georgia Street, right next to what is now a life recovery center. I remember it as the old Independent Life Insurance building. My father, who was born and raised in Donaldsonville, Georgia, moved down here to live with my aunt and uncle to finish high school at the original Lincoln High School. And he was active in sports there, from what people who knew him during that time have told me. Graduated from the original Lincoln and went on to have a stellar career in the United States military and in the United States Navy. I would also tell you that I have lived in Tallahassee for 40 years now. I came here as a student at Florida State University and decided to make Tallahassee my home. I met my wife here. We are raising our family, our 2 daughters, on the south side of Tallahassee. We made a commitment to this community, particularly the south side of Tallahassee. We built our home there. We're not leasing or renting. We built from the ground up. We made that kind of commitment in this community. Politically, I have served this community in a number of different capacities. First of all, as a member of the Leon County School Board, when I saw the inequities that existed in the school system in this district, I didn't complain about it. I didn't march about it. I decided that I was going to be where the decisions were being made, and I ran for the Leon County School Board twice before I was able to get elected. And I think anybody can tell you that my service on that board made tremendous differences in this school district for all of our students, but particularly African American students, in terms of facilities, the physical infrastructure of the district, and the quality of education that they received. I also had an opportunity to serve this area in the Florida House of Representatives and made no bones about my advocacy for issues that impacted the citizens of this district, the state of Florida, but particularly African Americans as it related to health care and education and jobs. And now this community has given me, for the past 2 years, an opportunity to serve on the City Commission. I was just reelected for a full 4-year term on the commission. And I have made no apologies for advocating for communities that have been left out of the growth and development of this community, those being the south side of town, South City, Providence, Frenchtown, Springfield, and other neighborhoods that are predominantly African American. Anyone in this community can tell you that I have advocated for those communities. And so I just wanted to build that context in terms of where I see this issue going. In order for, and I know the history of Frenchtown and how after integration, somebody mentioned that the demise of Frenchtown was a result of development. It was not a result of development. It was a result of integration in the 70s and 80s when African Americans had the opportunity to not just be forced to live in certain areas, but we could live wherever our money would allow us to live. We could go to school now in other areas of the community. And so as African Americans who lived in Frenchtown began to move out, it started to decline. And we had issues like drugs and crime and prostitution, much of which exists even today. And so our challenge is then, how do we preserve some semblance of what existed during that time, which will never exist again? No part of Tallahassee, as it was 50, 60, 70 years ago, looks like it did then. Tallahassee is changing. It's growing. I remember when Capitol Circle was a 2-lane road around this city with a one flashing caution light. Tell me where that exists today in Tallahassee on Capitol Circle. So change is going to occur. Change has occurred. And neighborhoods are going to change as this change occurs, as more people move into this area. So I think our challenge is to preserve elements of the past, but embrace that change and incorporate it into where this community is going, and Frenchtown is no different than other communities in that respect. I would venture to say that not a whole lot of us can even agree on the boundaries of a Frenchtown today. Even within those boundaries, there has been change already. Reverend Farrell mentioned the housing complex that's just been built on the other side of his church. There is student housing on the very lot that we're talking about, and has been for a while. There's other student housing that has encroached in what has been called the Frenchtown community. I lived in an apartment complex on Virginia Street when I was a student at Florida State University in the Frenchtown community. So student housing is not new to this area. And so we talk about change and development, and if we want that to occur, it is predicated on the population densities that will bring grocery stores. We're in the process now of completing a market study through the Community Redevelopment Agency that right now will tell us what this area will support. But what we know is without the proper population density and the discretionary income, y'all, commercial development will not come. Those are the things that those are the two elements that you have got to have. You don't have, and I've talked to business people throughout this community, you don't build commercial development and think that population density is going to come. It's just the opposite. You have to create the population density and the need for the commercial. We are faced, as you've heard, with an affordable, my own aide, he and I had this conversation earlier today. He's looking for a place to live in the city. And he's telling me, even with the salary that he makes, I won't tell you how much he makes, y'all.
It's public record.
But even with that, he's telling me that he cannot afford a place to live in the central city with what he's looking for. So imagine working couples then and the challenge that they're facing to find affordable housing, workforce housing in this community. And it's not endemic to only Tallahassee. It's throughout the state of Florida. It's throughout the nation. We went to Boulder, Colorado a couple of years ago. And what we found out that Boulder, Colorado, I'm just going to throw some figures out. They said they had a population of 125,000 people, let's say, from 8 to 5 in the afternoon. That was reduced to, let's say, 75,000 because so many of the people who worked in Boulder couldn't afford to live there. Even their law enforcement officers had to live in communities 25, 30 miles away. And we don't want that in Tallahassee. And so the City Commission, before I got here, adopted a policy of infill development. Rather than us, developing out to Thomasville, Georgia, the commission, rightly so, decided that we were going to pursue infill development, those areas in the community where we could put housing and commercial, where the infrastructure already existed, water and wastewater and sewer and transportation and sidewalks. And we didn't have to bear the expense of putting that in place as we built out into the suburbs. And so that's what we're facing here in Tallahassee. And if we're going to address those issues, it's got to start somewhere. And this project, I think, well, I know it's going to happen whether we sell this 0.87 acres of land or not. It's going to happen. My neighbor who is one of the owners of Strong & Jones Funeral Home, they've been there since 1947, have decided to sell. The student housing property owners, I'm sure they're making pretty good money, but they must have been offered quite a bit because they have agreed to sell. This project is going to happen. So I think, personally, I've talked to Attorney Akbar, I've talked to some others. I have met with staff and told them some things that I would like to see, and the developer has agreed to those issues, like even in the building design, preserving some of the history and culture of Frenchtown. A memorial walk like what we have here on Jefferson Street for the bus boycott, memorializing much of what the proud history and culture of Frenchtown right there on Macomb Street. I talked to them about the opportunity for minority and women-owned businesses to be involved in the construction of a project of that size. Can you imagine the economic impact that would have on minority and women-owned businesses to be subcontractors on a project of that size? I have asked them to give a priority to jobs that will be created to indigenous residents who qualify for those jobs. Through the CRA, again, we're looking at developing that block. Hopefully it will be with the Bethel Development Corporation, where the shelter used to be. So there is a plan for at least that corridor of Frenchtown. I like what and I'm going to name the organizations that signed on to this letter: the Frenchtown Preservation Coalition, the Frenchtown Neighborhood Improvement Association, the Tallahassee branch of the NAACP, the Tallahassee Urban League, the Frenchtown Revitalization Council, the Heritage Hub, and Carolina Oaks Homeowners Association. Essentially what they have asked for are several things: to put together a citizens committee to come up with a development plan for Frenchtown called Frenchtown in 50, a master planning work group, to hold on the permitting of any new large-scale student housing projects with more than 50 beds. I think those were those were the two things that were asked for in this letter. And they outlined some goals in terms of timelines and what this work group would accomplish. So I would suggest that we include that in the, I guess, Judy, we would say the purchase and sale agreement. Those issues would be negotiated with the builder in that purchase and sale agreement, and that we move forward with that. The CRA is about to close on a deal with North American Properties on the sale of the Bloxham and Firestone buildings. If that sale is successful, that will be $4.5 million that will go into the Frenchtown Southside CRA, dedicated to the Frenchtown Southside CRA. That money can only be spent within the boundaries of that CRA. There are significant things that can be done with that kind of money. I would even go farther, Mr. Mayor, to suggest maybe the $485,000 that's we get from the sale of this property be invested back into the community, if we can do that. But we have lots of opportunities, but we've got to embrace change, y'all. Change is coming. It's all around us. But with that change comes opportunity. And so if all of these things can be memorialized in an agreement, and in an agreement that we can hold the developer to, oh, the other thing that we're going to ask for is that the developer, and I think I've got my sheets here, that the developer agree to fund monthly events in the Frenchtown community, like the block party, the Frenchtown Heritage Festival that's held every year. And so if these issues can be agreed to and memorialized in an agreement, I'm for moving forward with the sale of this property.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Miller, was X order, please? Commissioner Miller, followed by Commissioner Maddox.
Thank you, Commissioner Richardson. That was an impassioned, I feel like that was a hard act to follow. I wanted to start out, since you brought up the topic of reinvestment, one of the things that I wanted to discuss here tonight was, because I've gotten some emails that referenced doing incubator activity, business incubator activity in Frenchtown, in the larger context of what people want to see happen there. And so one of the things that I wanted to suggest to you tonight is that we look over at the Frenchtown Heritage Market. That is a CRA project. And they have come a tremendous, I mean, the building's been purchased. It's been largely renovated, but not completely. But Michelle Gomez and James Bellamy have taken the original concept to a new height, and that is the fact that they have managed to raise $800,000 toward making this kitchen a USDA-approved kitchen. Now, what that means is that all the folks who are wonderful cooks that are right now under a cottage industry category will be able to become professionally certified when they make their product. It will be a place where they can go to cook, bake, produce the product, packaging, et cetera, shipping, and then they will be able to sell to larger organizations like Publix and Whole Foods and all of those folks who have, because then the product could be safely shelved, it would be USDA approved. In order to do that, they have to prepare those products in a USDA approved kitchen. This will be that. They already have, Michelle and Jim have already been able to acquire the actual stoves and all of the processing equipment, and it is sitting there in boxes. It's sitting there in boxes because it's waiting to be installed, but the money that they have raised can't go to finishing out the building in the needed electrical and water and drainage and all of that. They need another $150,000 to complete that part of it. And I would suggest to you tonight that we dedicate if we vote to sell this property, that we dedicate $150,000 to go to that, directly to that project to help to finish that out. That is at least $150 that is immediately reinvested into the community, and it finishes the work of the product that had already been started, that was a major and I don't know if Mr. Bellamy is still here, a major request from him and from the neighborhood all along for years that was only accomplished by working with the CRA. So I'd like to throw that out to you. In addition, we've had a lot of comments about process. So I want to start with the reason why most of you haven't heard from us. I know all of you have probably sent emails to us, and we can't answer you. We've been under what's called a cone of silence. From the date that an RFP goes out until the date that the decision is made, then the commission can't talk to anyone we can talk to our staff, but we can't talk to anyone from the developer side or from the neighborhood side or anywhere. Property owners, nobody has the ability. You guys can send us your comments, but we can't really get into a discussion with you. And so I want to make sure everybody was clear on why we haven't probably written you back. All right, the second thing is that this is a piece of private property, and only until the city's property came into it, remembering that the city's property is a small piece, basically less than a fifth of this entire property belongs to the city, and then only until that came into the picture did we have any jurisdiction. This was a private property transaction between private property owners and private development. That is not something that we get to have an opinion on. So we have an opinion when it comes to permitting, as Eddie Bass will jump right up and tell you, but that's where that stands. And it's real important to know there was no needed notice. There was none of that is required when private property changed hands. The fact is, though, when it did, and that's why I thought it was important for Judy to answer that question, that when the issue of the city's land came into the picture, it was then necessary to do that private property notice. And we legally are required, the city is legally required to do that. That's why and our legal department makes sure we obey our own rules. We have had a lot of, and that brings me to the fact that we actually voted to sell this property in October. A lot of the letters that I've gotten have compared this situation to the situation in Myers Park. And the way those compare, though, is not the way people are looking at it. The project in Myers Park wasn't a project, for one thing. It was a proposed comprehensive plan amendment. That's like that's just like you and me deciding whether or not to sell our house. Well, we did that in October on this property, and then the stage we're at now on this property is basically like we decided to sell our house, but now we've got a contract and we've got to decide if we're going to accept that contract. So those are two very, very different places in time. Finally, leading up to the process that you all have, Mr. Akbar, Mr. Flowers, several people, Reverend Farrell brought up the question of the process, and I completely agree with you that it is now time for us to have, and I really actually thought this had been done. What's the matter with you guys? I thought I don't think anybody was on the commission in 2000, but I thought that this had all been done and that we had a plan that we were following. So, and it turns out that actually a lot of work was done, but a lot of us weren't here and involved at that point. So it's a long time away, and it's time to redo that. So going forward, I think we need to take an inventory of other city properties that are for sale in this whole area, or not for sale, but that are available, and begin to form a cohesive vision of what this restoration is going to look like, what saving Frenchtown actually means. Because we talk about changes, the changes a lot of changes have already occurred. The Ebony Gardens has been converted to Goodbread Hills. Carolina and Virginia streets have been completely redone. The Renaissance building is there, and it was built with the intention of establishing opportunities for retail, but nobody came. Those storefronts are still there. But going back to Commissioner Richardson's comments about the critical mass, essentially, with population, you have to have the population there to go to those retail establishments or they won't do well. There's a huge lot of opportunity now that the shelter's gone. That's really going to make it a lot easier. I've walked all these streets. I've knocked on all these doors, and I go down there as often as I can to have coffee with Miss Annie Harris because she makes the best coffee. I keep telling her she should open a coffee shop, actually. But the fact is that I've been down there and I've seen students run when they were approached by somebody that was with me visiting just on campaigning, because it was a guy and he was kind of a big guy, and he walked up to this student and she ran to the door because she was scared. So we have to get to the point where people are willing to cross the street. Now that the shelter's gone, we have a whole different canvas, because that was really the people that were gathering around the pond were the people who were scaring people. So no, I didn't. I said that actually. I did not say that. I said the people that were around the pond were, and I saw it for myself, they were harassing and scaring folks. So those people, I'm going to repeat myself, they are no longer there. They've gone somewhere else. So now we've got a whole new opportunity. So I would also like to, and I don't think you can actually attach this to the developer agreement, and I can see my colleagues are ready for me to quit, but I do think we need to start a process where we do a visioning of the Frenchtown area. We answer these questions about what does saving Frenchtown mean, what does Frenchtown preservation mean, and then we have a plan to go by in the future.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Maddox.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Bellamy, stick around.
Yeah, don't go yet.
All right. I'm going to talk about the old times. I apologize. My youngest son has some type of flu virus, and it hit me when this meeting started. I'm going to try not to infect anybody up here. I've been up in my office in between that and running to the bathroom. So I've heard most of the testimony. I came down just for this, and then I'm taking off as quick as possible. I appreciate my colleagues' comments on both sides, and let me tell you what I agree with, and then a little bit different perspective. I agree this is a good development. I agree that we have to have density in order for retail to work, and we found that out because we tried to do retail early. So we have to have urban density. You have to have people living there to support the retail. I appreciate that. If this were a vote just on the development, I would be in favor of the development. What this is a vote on is to sell the property in front of it that the city owns. I started working on Frenchtown revitalization in 1993, so I was here during the original thing. The gentleman that spoke about the charrette, I was at the charrettes. And when we started, the block of Macomb Street from Tennessee Street down to 1010 North Macomb had more crime in that block than the rest of the city combined. If you went there after 9 o'clock at night, you could not get through the street because people just were in the street with open drinking and carousing and everything you can imagine. The city stepped in, we closed down Monroe's Pool Hall, we bought up different parcels, we took Ebony Gardens that looked like it was just out of New Jack City and had that knocked down, and you got Goodbread Hills that's there today. We took Carolina Arms Apartments, which was abandoned apartments with chain link fence and razor wire around the end of it, and it was just a crack haven, and turned it into Carolina and Georgia today, and I live on the other end of Carolina. So before you start waving your signs at me, no account for manners. Let me tell you why I can't support this item. We asked the neighborhood what they wanted to see because we wanted to go to the neighborhood and say, we're not going to change you. You've stuck it out. What do you want to see? And the number one thing that the neighborhood wanted to see was retail. So we purchased the property on that area of Macomb for retail. When the retail didn't work, we moved. We were supposed to have retail on the other side where the Renaissance building is. We made the decision to move our city offices and then later the county offices there to add more foot traffic so retail would work. Still didn't work. So all these years, we've waited until the climate was such that retail would work. I think the climate is such that retail worked today. So I can't support this unless it's full retail on Macomb Street, which is what we promised in the beginning. But if I could add, the reason that I'm voting the way I'm voting is because I was here originally, and I feel like I bear responsibility. I think my colleagues, their comments on the project itself are right on the money. I think it's going to be a good project. And I think that if this vote goes through, there is a very good opportunity, what Commissioner Richardson was talking about, with negotiations that come back with the developer to put into the sale agreement the things that we're looking for. So I'm hopeful that we will have a good result regardless of the vote today.
And some of that will include retail, Commissioner Maddox.
All right. Order. Judy, would you mind taking the podium again? I have a couple of questions for you. On the, you showed 4 pictures of a design, and I'm not sure how you get back to it. But is there a design that is specific to this particular project? I saw 4 examples of what?
I believe those were just representative. Excuse me. Yeah, representative.
And is there a rendering at all that we can see that gives a sense of what the proposal actually
Devin, do we have
is going to
anything
be?
yet that would be that specific? No.
So so yeah, and they're vastly different, right? I mean, even as I look at them, they all look like, nice developments.
Correct.
But when you think about obviously what is around it, and you try to create an environment that feels seamless and is connected, these all stick out like a sore thumb. But if I could, so let me jump to the end, and then I'll back my way into it. What we have is we have to reckon with each other, all of us, about what the real challenges that we're facing in the Frenchtown area. And I appreciate everybody, my colleagues in the historical aspect of what the community has been through, the evolution of it, from the point of it being extremely vibrant, a renaissance in and of itself in the heyday. And actually, if you trailed back prior to that, if you were looking at, shotgun houses, and Mr. Bellamy, you tell stories of basically eating off the land because every tree bore fruit and vegetables. And obviously, we had the period probably in the late 70s, 80s, where you had a lot of flight out of a lot of the urbanized area of the city. And folks who basically were no longer confined, almost by law and certainly by practice, of redlining and otherwise, of having to be in Frenchtown. Folks were upwardly mobile and they went further out, as did most people during that particular period. And now what we have, and I tell you, it feels good to see that folks are really are fighting for the preservation of an area and the preservation of a neighborhood. And frankly, it feels like a theme. We've had that now consistently for 3 or 4 weeks, and even going back beyond that. So what I'd like to see as part of the reason why I'm not prepared to vote for a sale is I actually think we need a lot more concretized on paper. Yeah. And it's really, really, really challenging, partly because of the way we kind of got to this place, why we're here this evening, to bring a neighborhood back when trust gets interrupted. But I think we have to make an effort to get everybody back to the table. I also want to say this isn't the fault of the developer. It's not the fault of the planning staff. This is the fault of maps that were approved over 2 decades ago that laid out what the future development is and was supposed to be, that probably during the time were rightly conceived. And now we have a situation where through the establishment of Goodbread Hills, through the revitalization of Carolina Oaks, through the removal of the shelter, that there's the opportunity for new life, expanded life, a rebirth in some senses. And that's not to say that we're not going to have development. In fact, in order for the area to thrive, we actually have to have people move back into the area, working in the area, shopping in the area, going to the pharmacy in the area. If that doesn't happen, then we really are just holding on to a dream and one, quite frankly, deferred. It's going to be a requirement that we get development. But the truth is it's not development for the sake of development. It's got to be development that's consistent with the way in which we want to see the community grow and flourish. So what I would love to see, and I don't know what I kind of believe that the only leverage we have at this point is through the sale of our land, because the truth is it's consistent. What's being proposed is consistent with the other land use that's there. I doubt if I'm the person who wants to do the development that I want to do it absent this parcel. So if that's the case, I think that's our best opportunity to leverage a vision that maybe we won't get everybody, and that may be the case, but we may get a greater consensus of what's happening, because I think the worst thing we can have is to say you either get this or you get whatever it is that we say. I think you can't put I don't even want to use that phraseology, but you don't want to threaten people with, we're going to give you whatever it is that we want if you don't agree. And that's why I think more conversation can be had. That maybe gets us to a place where maybe you don't get rid of all the resistance, but that you get a larger shared vision that people can feel real proud about. I do believe that development is coming. I'm a fan of urban infill, but not for the sake of urban infill. It has to be done in a way that's respectful of what presupposed it. But so my posture is a delay is not necessarily a denial, but I'm not prepared to vote yes as this is being proposed this evening. And what I mean when I say yes to, I mean to the sale of the property. Now, should the development choose to go on in spite of our particular parcel, they're within their rights to do what it is that they have to do, that the law and the code allows. But I think if they want to move forward with a project that can be fully embraced or as widely embraced as we can accomplish, and a project that is done with as much input as we can without making it unfeasible, then I think that's where we are. And quite frankly, commissioners, I think, again, not foretelling where this vote might ultimately end up, but I do think that we're going to have to do some real hard work with our own planning department around this mapping. Because what we've now done is we put the developer and our city staff in a condition where they've got a set of maps that are saying one thing and a dais that may be saying something different, and a community that's certainly saying something different. And we've got to bring that to heel, or else it won't be resolved. I mean, the land uses will continue to allow these applications to come forward because they're consistent with what's allowed. So anyway, Judy, I don't know what we can do with that. I don't know if we retain leverage here. Clearly, there has to be a vote. My preference would be to use whatever leverage we have to get a project that might be more fully embraced. Commissioner Ziffer.
Okay, so expanding upon what the mayor just said and what Commissioner Maddox said, who was then Mayor Maddox, the Renaissance building still is designed for retail. The first floor still is, I mean, you can see the storefronts along Macomb. So it seems to me, Mayor, if I can kind of read between the lines, is that if there were an opportunity for, let's say, us to have a discussion about how the Renaissance Center could be part of, not selling or anything, but part of this discussion for retail, but also leveraging even further some type of architectural identity that's a little closer to what Frenchtown looks like. Maybe that would give some others on this commission an opportunity to feel stronger about the sale, if I could suggest that.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the caveat is it also includes some additional engagement, and I would encourage not one-on-one meetings with folks, but as representative a group as we can possibly accomplish of stakeholders in the area. That being said, I also think you got to make sure you're working with people who actually have an intention toward coming to some conclusion here. That if this is no for the sake of no, without any recommendation on how we get the kind of vibrancy that's necessary to make this area thrive, that's kind of a non-starter as well. Commissioner?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And my point earlier was that we give the community, and I just take it for granted that the folk who signed, who had their names affixed to this letter, are a representative group of the community. And they would be a part, and any others that might, and for the sake of those who don't remember, it was the Frenchtown Preservation Coalition, the Frenchtown Neighborhood Improvement Association, the Tallahassee branch of the NAACP, the Tallahassee Urban League, Frenchtown Revitalization Council, Heritage Hub, and the Carolina Oaks Homeowners Association. And I would also think Attorney Akbar, because he's been in, and maybe Annie Harris, they've been in negotiations and discussions with the developer as well, that those things be hammered out in the purchase and sale agreement. And if they can't, then I can't support the sale. But if they can come back and there is general consensus that these are the things that will be agreed to, that will help to not only preserve the history and culture of Frenchtown as we knew it, but also to allow the community to move forward and embrace the change that is going to occur, then I could support the sale. So I guess what I'm saying is I would not want to vote on anything this evening until we have these issues addressed in a purchase and sale agreement.
Motion to defer.
Second.
This until the 26th, which gives staff time, not us, but staff time to try to resolve the issues that were mentioned.
Commissioners, there's a motion.
Is that the 26th of April?
Yes.
There's a motion and a second to delay the action on this item for a month. And I think with instruction, consistent with comments made by the commission this evening, and this is again on our part, the sale. Again, if there are intentions to move outside of that, that is what it is. But assuming we're dealing with a developer who may want the whole parcel, that we've got some leverage to have these kinds of conversations. And Mr. Manager, since I don't know how you want to structure this, I know Judy does real estate, but I would strongly recommend that we include the CRA as a component part of this. In addition, as to what was said, the representative group of the neighborhood and other stakeholders, and a conversation assuming there's willingness to do that.
Yes, sir.
All right. Commissioners, there's a motion and a second to defer this item by a month. Commissioner Miller?
All right. No, I don't really understand what's going to happen after this, mainly because I'm looking at these the wording that they've supplied here, and basically they want us to create a plenary panel that will set a timeline for 2 months to come back with an adoption agreement with the French.
Commissioner, I think that's separate.
That's part of the motion?
No, it's not. That's a separate item that's intended for ongoing or going above,
Okay,
which I
so
think we should do beyond this point.
What are the requests that you are asking to be addressed that have not been addressed? That's what I'm not clear
So
about.
I'll just restate mine, and others may have their own. I think the scale is not right. I don't think this is representative, in my opinion, and again, I'm not an architect, but if you set this side by side, and we've got GIS people or whoever can do this, adjacent to what is around it, this is going to be pretty obviously out of place. And I'm wondering whether or not we can't get some, and I'm not even sure which one of these four it is, frankly, because we're not actually dealing with an actual rendering. These are potentials. And I think we can get closer and beyond potential with some input from the folks who are in the area. I also heard a lot of ideas around retail on the Macomb side. It's obviously not codified anywhere. I'd love to see more on paper that says what we're actually doing and not just what the conversation is. Commissioner Ziffer?
I think there should be a real effort on the part of the CRA and for this government, for us, to keep track of what's going on over at the legislature, because if the CRA legislation does move forward and we plan on doing anything here, we're going to have to do it really fast. And so we need to think about that.
Commissioner Richardson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Also included in that litany of items, as I indicated earlier, would be that I saw a project in Tampa where they actually had on the building facade items that captured the history and culture of the community that existed before this 10 or 15-story building went up in the area. So something to that effect. Using local minority businesses in the construction process as an aspirational goal, I understand that. Give local, indigenous members of the community preference for the jobs that will be created that they qualify for. Funding monthly events in the Frenchtown community. A memory walk along Macomb Street. And I think those were all of the ones between Attorney Akbar and myself. And I'm sure there may be others. There may be, when the community gets involved, there may be other bigger and brighter ideas than we've got here now, but that will be the purpose of that discussion going forward between now and when this item comes back to us.
Commissioner Maddox, followed by Commissioner Miller.
If we're going to require them to fund monthly events and hire certain people and do all that, we ought to give them the property. I mean, you can't charge somebody market rate and then say you have to do all these different things. I mean, that's not going to work. They're going to walk from the project, and I wouldn't blame them. I mean, I think that the way we hold true to what we have promised in Frenchtown, and this government has done an awful lot for Frenchtown, how we hold true to that is to require retail on Macomb Street. I mean, that was the promise. So,
Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Richardson, followed by, I'm sorry, Commissioner Miller, followed by Commissioner Richardson.
Well, first of all, I'm going to have to go back and say we've built retail on Macomb Street, and it isn't full. And why is this retail going to be any different than more empty storefronts? I want to know that. Secondarily, though, we're going to need to agenda this on the CRA for tomorrow, because that's exactly where the CRA comes in. This is exactly what the CRA does. It comes in and works with a developer and helps to pay for all these things that we ask for, that the developer can go forward and do. I mean, I'll vote for delay because that's generally what you want. I can see that that's what you all want to do. But the fact is, I don't want to lose the opportunity that we have here to actually accommodate all the requests that have come in. But that's going to take a partnership with the CRA, without a doubt, and I think we need to talk about this further tomorrow.
I don't disagree. So there were a lot of names that were mentioned and organizations that were mentioned as having had their voices heard and it being reflected in some negotiated agreement, but not one of them stood up in support of this effort. Not one. So
Their names are on this.
not one stood up this evening in support of this effort.
I
And
didn't
so
put together this letter.
I'm not doubting you. I'm not doubting you. What I'm saying is we just had a big public hearing, and not one said that this, the development coming forward was a negotiated agreement where the concerns of the community were accommodated for. And so I'm hopeful that between now and a month from now, that will look different. Commissioner Richardson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think to promise retail in this area now is promising something that's not going to happen. It hasn't happened. Business people have told us it's not going to happen now. But I think that the community should be given an opportunity, more of an opportunity, to have input into this. That's why I seconded Commissioner Ziffer's motion. I think everything should be put on the table. And if the developer looks at some items and says, well, no, if you require me to do this, I'm going to walk away from the project. Because there are some things in what we talked about that the CRA can do. The CRA did, if I'm not mistaken, the CRA did the memory walk on Jefferson Street. Why couldn't the CRA, we're talking $4.5 million that's going to come into that Frenchtown Southside CRA from the sale of the Bloxham and Firestone buildings. We've got, if we sell the property, that's another $485,000. So all of the costs don't have to be borne by the developer. But all of this is still a part of the discussion. And so I don't want to take anything off the table. It should be a part of the negotiated process, and whatever else the community comes up with, it could be a partnership between the developer, the city, and the CRA.
I understand. Commissioners, there's a motion and a second to defer action until the last April meeting. All those in favor, let me know by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Motion passes unanimously. Commissioners, we're now on to item 13.02.
Mr. Mayor, I apologize. I'm going to fade out.
Hope you feel better.
Scott, would you go shake all their hands?
We'll just wait a moment to clear the chamber.
Yeah, I'll shake the hand because I ain't got shit up.
Come on, Greg. Come on. If we could please move to clear the chamber, please. We've got additional business.
You want me to introduce it?
Not just yet. If we could move conversations out of the back door, please. All right. City Manager, will you introduce the next item?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
We've got to clear the chamber. If you're leaving, please exit. If you're leaving, please exit. Thank you. If you could introduce the item.
Item 13.02 is the approval to initiate an out-of-cycle comprehensive plan amendment for the Walani Critical Area Plan and the Holy Comforter Episcopal School.
I'll move the item.
There's a, commissioners,
Guys,
we've actually moved on to the next item.
I've moved it.
There's a motion.
Second.
Please clear the chamber. Please clear the chamber.
Motion in a second. Go ahead. He seconded.
City Manager, there is a motion and a second to approve the item. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, let it be known by saying no. Motion passes 4-0.
This is crazy.
Please move the conversations out of the back of the room. Please move the conversations out of the back of the room.
Let's take a break.
Please move the conversations out of the back of the room. We still have a meeting here. Thank you. That last motion was approved 4-0. Item 13.03, City Manager.
Thank you, sir. Commissioners, you approved a temporary moratorium on new or expanded medical marijuana facilities so that the city may consider potential land use rules for this emerging industry. Staff provided a presentation on potential areas of regulation, including an overview of how other communities are addressing these issues. This agenda item provides additional information on this topic as requested by the Commission. Karen Jumonville is here to answer any questions you may have.
I'm sorry, what is this? We just, are there any questions for Karen on this item?
Option 1.
I'm just going to go on record. I still think that we're premature on all this. And I wish this wouldn't keep coming back because, and I know we keep saying to bring it back, but
It says prepare. It says prepare. We're
I
going to be
understand.
prepared.
I understand.
My vote's still the same as it was before on this item. So, Commissioners, if there are no questions, I imagine the previous commission decision still stands.
There's a vote here, isn't there?
No, there's
No,
no
no
second.
No, informational.
Great.
Okay, Commissioners, now moving on to,
It says
oh, that's
recommended
it.
action on here. I don't know if you
Yeah, I think you
care
got
about
it.
that, but I guess
Well,
we'll just.
This was the direction by the City Commission, and I don't believe you voted on these issues before.
We voted,
Commissioners, we were just looking for direction on the items to include in a future ordinance that we would bring to you for introduction and then subsequent public hearings.
And I
Okay,
think
so-
that the direction is that this is still the same.
yeah, I mean,
correct.
I don't, unless you hear another change, I mean, I think we gave.
No, our recommendation is the same as the
Okay.
last meeting.
Okay. All right. Commissioner Ziffer, your comments, as previously stated, are noted.
Yes.
The same.
And the same. Okay, Commissioners. Chairman, was there anything else on that?
No.
All right. So we're now at the point of the meeting where we will hear speakers on non-agended commission items. Are there any speakers? First of all, we should take the 3 that were rolled from earlier, but
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the first of those is Edward Hollifield, and then Kim Ross.
Oh, we only have, we're good. Only 2 of us. That's all right.
we don't have a vote. You're fine.
Ed Hollifield, Longleaf Court. I think one thing that this discussion has brought out is that we really need to look at the CRA. We really need to look at the CRA staff. Because we have a situation in which the CRA has existed for it started in 2000, if I'm correct. It has existed for 17 years, and the question that I would have is, if the CRA is so great, why is Tallahassee the most economically segregated city in the country? That has to be answered. And I think part of the answer is the fact that all of the money goes to the very top. All of the money goes to the very top, for the most part. There's no reason, really, for the downtown CRA to even exist. We gave thousands of dollars to Ron Sachs. There's no blight in regard to the Ron Sachs office building. The Doubletree Hotel, there's no blight. We gave them almost $1 million. And then when you look at the CRA staff, there are no blacks on the CRA staff with any power. You got Wayne Tedder, white. You got Roxanne Manning, white. You got Rick McGraw, white. There are no blacks with any kind of power on the CRA staff. So no wonder you run into all of these predicaments. Big Ben Cares, that was rammed down our throats against the wishes of the community. We gave them $1.5 million of CRA money, Frenchtown CRA money, and what does Big Ben Cares do? They turn around and say, if you don't have any health insurance, we don't want you. You know, send your behinds over to Bond or somewhere else, but don't come to our brand new office building, even though we're giving you $1.5 million.
This is what Big Ben Cares told the black community after taking $1.5 million of CRA money. So I'm saying this CRA, the best thing that it could do probably is disappear, because it really hasn't contributed to the economic vitality of the black community. Not when you have all this economic segregation in Leon County with a Gini coefficient of 0.51. That just means a mathematical term that indicates that Tallahassee is in sad shape in regard to how this money is actually distributed. It all goes to the very top. You talk about economic growth, but if the beneficiaries of all of the growth, the very top, the top 1%, then what have we accomplished? And the bottom line is, if we're talking about tax money, then the benefit has to, the community has the benefit. TMH the same way. Now, Curtis criticized.
Excuse me, that's 3 minutes.
Curtis criticized me over TMH. We give TMH millions.
Thank you,
Dr.
Dr.
And they turn around and say, look, you can't go to our outpatient clinics if you're on Medicaid. Even if you manage to get Medicaid, you cannot go to the TMH outpatient clinics. And we own TMH.
Thank you, Dr. Hollifield.
So we really need to look at how these public dollars are being spent.
Indeed. Thank you. Next speaker.
Kim Ross, I'm not sure whether she is still here. Kim, she has left. Then Delatry Hollinger, I don't see him either at this point. Those were the other two speakers on the earlier item. So Jermaine Miller.
Mr. Mayor and the city commission. My address is 1790 Balkan Road, Tallahassee, Florida, by the airport. As the residents in that area and the residents that rides the bus that stays in the area, we demand a petition, and I had it written out and they signed it and everything. And I was reading an article back in February. It says it's costing the city $100,000 for y'all to pay the drivers overtime. And the residents and the civilians, they were saying that, hey, we need a bus, go to the airport in Balkan Road, because some of us walk in the rain, some of us is on wheelchairs, some of us have to use canes and everything when we have bad medical problem. Well, I reached out to Star Metro 3 times. Third time, it wasn't no good attempt. So what the citizens and I did, they signed this petition here, and we wanted a bus out there basically for elderly people. And they said, they read it and they said, if Lake Jackson has a bus, why don't we have a bus out there?
Great. We, ACMO for transportation.
Reese.
If you can connect with Reese Goad back here in the back, he's the assistant city manager over transportation and can.
Who do I submit the petition to?
You could submit the petitions to the treasurer clerk, and Reese is in the back of the room.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
The next speaker is Lori Davis, and then Michael Moore.
Good evening. I'm Lori Davis. Yes, that Lori Davis. I live at 3042 Shamrock Street North. I'd like to thank the commissioners who have come to see us and the mayor. Commissioner, we will be seeing you tomorrow. Unfortunately, we seem to have lost Commissioner Maddox and Commissioner Miller, but we'll make sure they hear us. All I can say is I'm glad I don't have your jobs, because you have enough on your shoulders to buckle the hardiest person. But our conversations seem to have indicated that you feel ensuring the future of the Klarn Golf Course, which is a privately owned business, is also your responsibility. Well, our entire single neighborhood wants that too, but it's not our responsibility and it's not yours. What is your responsibility is considering and voting to approve or deny the application to amend the FLUM and comprehensive plan. Saving a privately held business with an outdated and unsuccessful business model for an owner who's guilty of gross management over 2 decades here and in other communities, by spot zoning interior land in an existing neighborhood, which will harm existing housing stock and be destructive to the integrity of the residential environment, which comprises 7/8 of the adjoining land, is a clear inconsistency with not one but 4 land use policies and the comprehensive plan vision statement. Most of you have visited with us and learned the community has not been allowed to provide our ideas. We have been formulating them and need time to solidify them. We already presented 2 viable plans, one directly to the owner, the other to his attorneys. One was rejected outright and one never responded to. The applicant has pursued one plan and only one plan: build, build, build. The city needs housing. The city wants urban infill. This is not the way. There is land in Killearn which can be used to fulfill these goals without rezoning and without building on the course and setting a precedent which will allow future development. The land you hope to save will no longer be savable. In the coming weeks, when considering your vote on this application, consider the traffic, the stormwater, the property owners, but mostly the applicant. Send him back to the community to talk to us about our ideas. Get specifics, because now we have none. Find a way to tell the applicant to try again, because you cannot approve changes that he has applied for without some legal guarantee holding him and any developer accountable and responsible for fulfilling their promises. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker.
Next speaker is Michael Moore, and then Linda Franklin.
Good evening. Michael Moody. I live at 4039 Kilmartin Drive in Killearn, and I'm here to talk about the Killearn issue. I think that over the last, it seems like there's been a lot of information that's been urged upon you all about how this proposal will result in saving Killearn Country Club. As a resident, I don't understand how that is the case, because the property is subject to a lot of debt. It's subject to mortgages that were originally taken out in 1996 to buy Perdido Bay Golf Club. When that club was sold, the mortgage wasn't paid off. At the same time, there was $10.8 million collected from the American Golf leases. Long story short, the debt's left on the property. So there's been an extension of an additional $225,000 taken out this month, which makes a total of $780,000 taken out since 2015. That amounts to, in total, $2.6 million that's on the property right now. And so where's the plan? If there's a plan that's going to result in the club being improved, then he has to comply with the mortgage documents, or the lender has to come out and say, we don't want the proceeds, we're going to allow you to do this. And Mr. Shelley can confirm that that's the way mortgages work. If it has a due on sale clause, it's recorded. You can't come in later, agree with somebody else, and use the money for whatever you want. So we have a big problem on our hands, and you guys have a big problem on your hands, because if it turns out that this is going to be approved and it's going to put urban residential in the middle of Killearn, and the money's going to go just to pay off the mortgage of Mr. Tuck or Palmetto Club Properties, then you have a major problem. So what I would urge you to do is be very vigilant and ask the right questions, dig in deep, appoint a committee if you have to find out what promises are being made. Unfortunately, as a resident of Killearn, none of us that are here today can find out what those promises are. We've heard bits and pieces of there's an agreement to escrow funds, but it doesn't make any sense from a legal perspective based upon the fact that a prior recorded mortgage trumps any later agreement. So the same problem exists with the KHA. There's apparently been negotiations by 4 members of the KHA, which they call now the Executive Committee, have been negotiating with Mr. Tuck apparently to the exclusion of the rest of the members of the KHA. They haven't even been included in the meetings or allowed to find out what's going on. And now they only hold closed-door meetings. There's been 2 or 3 of them in the last few weeks. We're hoping that they'll, come to some meaningful concessions or something that will protect everyone, but we have no degree of confidence that that's the case. So I would urge you to be very vigilant to protect all of our interests, ask the right questions, don't take what's being told to you at face value. When this first came up, we were told that the club was going to be built on in 6 months and that there was nothing that anybody could do about it, but I went and dug around and found this restrictive covenant of providing the members a right to purchase. He didn't want anybody to know about that. We can debate whether that was waived or not, but it doesn't really matter. But anyway, that's the long story short. I think there's a significant risk here that you guys are going to end up possibly approving a deal where the money will just go to pay off one individual's mortgage and there will be no improvement.
That's your 3 minutes. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Last shot for Linda Franklin. Then Jim Stockwell. Jim Stockwell is next, to be followed by Vanessa Henry.
So much more charming.
I'm about to say something.
Good evening,
Evening.
Commissioners, Mr. Mayor. I'm Jim Stockwell, property owner of 4058 Kilmartin Drive, the Clarn neighborhood, Tallahassee. And I want to highlight that the Planning Commission voted no on Palmetto Properties Limited Partnership LLC request to amend the future land use map. The proposed amendments are clearly not in keeping with the comprehensive plan's vision statements, policies, or objectives. The amendments should receive a no vote from each member of the commission. I will cite Robert Deal's analysis from the February 7th Planning Commission meeting and talk about a couple points made. Policy 2.223 was cited concerning the prohibition of urban enclaves in existing neighborhoods. He stated creating urban residential land use enclaves in an existing neighborhood is verboten and not permitted under the comprehensive plan. He discussed the proposals, an example of spot zoning, which gives preferential treatment to one parcel. He cited policy 2.1.1, which forbids incompatible encroachment of any incompatible uses that are destructive to the character and integrity of a residential neighborhood. He also cited housing element 3.2, which provides for fostering and maintaining the viability of residential areas and neighborhoods and the integrity of housing stock. He stated, I'm going to move that we recommend the City Planning Commission deny the request as submitted by the applicant and no changes be made to future land use preservation. I would also emphasize from the vision statement, it warns against altering the character of neighborhoods by unwise land use decision, warns against constant assaults on neighborhood, seeks to maintain the integrity of existing neighborhood, encourages new residential neighborhoods to incorporate a wider range of services. The property owners opposing this change of amendment are thoughtful, concerned, creative, well-informed citizens with much at stake. When all the verbiage and PR are stripped away, we are the only ones that will save the golf course and the viability of the neighborhood. The basic issue, when all this is stripped away, and your primary responsibility is to assure compliance with the comprehensive plan that protects the Clarn neighborhood. There is absolutely no need to rush or railroad the passage of these amendment changes.
Excuse me, that's 3 minutes.
Fair and well-studied alternatives need more time, study, and dialogue. Please note no when the opportunity arises. Thank you.
Thank you.
Vanessa Henry. And then Gary Early is the last speaker I have for the evening.
Hi,
Hey.
I'm Vanessa Henry, 950 Edge Hill Circle, Tallahassee, Florida. Could I give this?
Yes.
I'll be brief. 3 different subjects. I'm here. My first thing is I've been working with the homeless for the past couple months. Since we were here before with my kids, their mom was, something happened, and we've went out to the streets to interact with them and to find out what their needs are and try to get beneath, because we've been there just recently and more than one time. So I've researched and found out about the 10-year plan to end homelessness that was done for Mayor Marks. Real quick, wanted to know if the, number one, have we produced adequate housing in the past 10 years as planned? 2, have we provided the support necessary to enhance all citizens to meet the necessary, to succeed the threshold for the income to sustain self-sufficiency? And 3, have we minimized health care crisis through the provision of primary health care to all uninsured individuals? And lastly, have we provided adequate transportation to help with to provide them with the independence? I know it's been a long day for you all. I won't take up much of your time, and I'll come back later if I have to. Secondly, I have research for National Pay It Forward Day. It's where we would just want to give back, do something nice for someone. And it's April 28th, nationwide, and I Googled a proclamation or something that we needed for the mayor to hopefully take part in, for us to be able to take part in. And I would hope that we'll be able to participate in the National Pay It Forward. The paperwork that I gave you was, I researched this about these tiny houses, the tiny house village for the homeless as a solution to homelessness. A lot of states have tried it. They look pretty cool to me. They're one single family homes, upstairs, downstairs, and there's a design there. It's a minimum of $2,000 to build this particular model, and as opposed to an entire complex. And we can use it as transition. You don't come here to stay permanently, but at least to get them off of the streets until they can get into their own homes. It's just a solution, an idea that I wanted to bring before you to see if you guys were, if the committee was interested in kind of looking further into it. As a matter of fact, all this property that they're talking about, hey, let's do the village, tiny house village. Start some praying and we'll get this $500,000. And that's a question. If we come up with $500,000, can we purchase the property? Sure. Yes?
I think there's a process.
All y'all want is a check, right?
No, I think there's a process. But let me just say to you, one, thank you. And I always appreciate hearing your thoughts and your ideas. And actually, some of this is underway. And what I would suggest is Michael Parker, who's there in the back of the room, who at the city is sort of over the range of the questions you asked, as well as this last piece on the tiny houses, which I know a number of us went to see, took a tour of, that a philanthropist in our community is working with the government to sort of bring to fruition. But if you see Michael Parker, who's back there in the bullpen.
Okay, one final question for you, Mayor. Will you be interested in, it's okay to hear what's going on in the streets out with the homeless. I moved from Gainesville, Florida in 2009, I believe it was. Rodney Long was our commissioner, and he went out to the streets, and he spent 7 days with $7. He got out of his business, his office, his suit, and he literally lived the life for 7 days. And he was able to come back with a whole different perspective, not what someone told him.
Yeah.
He actually walked in their shoes. And it's like they have so much underneath this big gauze, but if we pull it off quickly, we're going to cause some more eternal damage. So we're looking to figure out how can we peel back slowly so the air can get to it in order to begin to heal. And there's a lot of molestation. I'm speaking personally.
Sure.
So we got to figure out how do it's beyond the meals. I mean, it's okay to eat, to provide them with a meal. That's okay, but it goes beyond that. There are too many local churches. There's an event that I'm sponsoring, and I'll get back because it's in June. But we've got to get beyond the four walls to be able to reach these people where they are and figure out what has caused them. And get these counselors on the street. The crackhead is not going to walk over 20 miles to the drug counselor's office to get help, but he's crying out for help. How do we get them out on the streets with the truck like they do for the AIDS test and all this stuff? Let the counselors go out with them, to walk and interact with these people. I walk out there. I built a relationship. But these are mothers. These are fathers. When you can put a face to those prostitutes and those men out there, those are dads. Those are grandfathers. Those are parents. Thank you.
That's right. No, thank you for that. And I will say, you should know that probably every one of us individually have gotten out of the four walls, as you put it. And some of us have stayed overnight. Others have spent significant time in the shelter ourselves. Many of us have raised money and resources, and I will tell you, the way in which we deal with homelessness in this community, you have people coming from all over the country to come and observe the way in which Tallahassee, Leon County has now begun to address this problem. Now, it's not perfect, but it certainly is on the way to where we ultimately want to be, where we start to serve and address people in a humane way, right? Not by their situation and circumstance, but as humans, as people, as persons. And I'm proud of a great deal of the advancement we made, but there's still a long way to go. So I appreciate that. Commissioner Ziffer?
Yeah, if I could interject, there is a very dark cloud on the horizon, though, and it's in the name of the Trump budget that was passed down to Congress last week, $6 billion cuts in community development block grants, which basically have funded a significant amount of our housing and rapid rehousing for the homeless. If anybody here has any influence over any of our electeds, particularly, I think Bill Nelson is okay, and I think Al Lawson's okay,
Awesome.
but I would suggest if you could call Neil Dunn to let him know that CDBG funds need to stay intact. The entire HUD budget is $52 billion. The entire budget, and we're talking about increasing our defense spending more than that. So our priorities for this community, those are not our priorities. So I would suggest if you want to help the homeless, contact not only our congressmen or senators or anybody else you might know, and let them know we need to keep CDBG funded.
Yes, sir.
It's a big thing.
Sir, thank you.
Thank you.
Also, could I add something to that? I don't know when you arrived, but we had a long conversation about doing future planning and visioning for especially city properties in the Frenchtown area. And, you know, what you're proposing is connected directly to what they're asking for, which is more affordable housing, you know, homes, though. So I know that Michael Parker came up behind you to talk to you more, and if you can give him your information so he can let you know how you can be involved in that, be great.
Yes,
thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker?
Next speaker is Gary Early. That's the last speaker I have, Mayor.
Thank you.
I know how relieved you are. Mayor, Commissioners, I'm Gary Early. I live at 5009 Kenmare Court. I'm here to speak about the golf course issue that I know you all love so much. I hope you recognize my name, because maybe that means you've read some of the materials that I've sent you, but I do tend to be a little wordy, and I may try to convey too much in writing, so I want to focus on one thing that I hope you'll consider as you approach your deliberations in 2 weeks, and that is what I believe to be the critical and dispositive issue of the effect of Comprehensive Plan Policy 2.2.23, which says that urban residential category is not intended to be applied within the interior of an existing neighborhood. Now, regardless of how you feel about Mr. Tuck, and you may believe that Mr. Tuck is going to take Killearn Golf Course and turn it into the next Augusta National, but that isn't the issue. The fact is that under the terms of your comprehensive plan, he cannot legally put urban residential in the middle of Killearn Estates unless you decide, as a political matter, that Killearn Estates is not a neighborhood, is not an existing Tallahassee neighborhood. And if that's the decision, if that's the case that's going to be made, then truly we have passed into the realm where truth and facts have no political meaning anymore, that they exist only to be manipulated. And that's exactly what's happening here. The suggestion that Killearn Estates is this loose amalgam of different neighborhoods and that Site E is at the edge of a neighborhood is purely cynical and calculated misrepresentation of the nature of the Killearn Estates neighborhood. And it is designed only to circumvent your comprehensive plan. So I ask that you resist the urge to allow that manipulation of what Killearn Estates is, and to uphold the plain language and meaning of the comprehensive plan. When the comprehensive plan says you don't put urban residential in the middle of an existing neighborhood, it means you don't put urban residential in the middle of an existing neighborhood. So if you decide Killearn Estates isn't an existing neighborhood, you're going to have to take away the Neighborhood of the Year awards that have been given to it. And you're going to have to go to the Killearn Homes Association and tell them to take down their website. And you know, everybody in this town will tell you what Killearn Estates is. And there's no misunderstanding as to what it is by anybody who lives there or anybody who lives in this city, in my view. There are people who will tell you, I'm sure in 2 weeks, that it's not, and they're paid to tell you that, and they can't tell you the truth, because if they tell you the truth, then the comprehensive plan will not let them do what they do, what they want to do. So I just ask that you give meaning to your comprehensive plan, and that you don't vote strictly to benefit an owner who for the past 20 years has done nothing but suck the life out of the Killearn Country Club, and that you don't vote to allow him to continue to suck the life out of the Killearn Estates neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to all of the speakers who came this evening. I think that was the final speaker. Commissioners, we're now on sharing of ideas. Commissioner Ziffer.
This Saturday, March 25th, 8:30 to 11:30, sponsored by Keep Tallahassee, Leon County Beautiful, Keep Florida Beautiful, Boys and Girls Club, and Gulf Winds Tracks Club. There is a, let's see, it's a fun run, but also more importantly, there's going to be a cleanup of Lake Alberta. And so if anybody's interested, go to 594 North Lake Bradford Road. And like I said, it's 8:30 to 11:30 on Saturday, and you can do a great job. I remember last time we saw the number of bags of trash that was picked up was pretty significant. So if trails are important to you and cleaning up a lake's important to you, and you want to also have a good time running a little bit, go to this. I think you'd have a great time. That's mine.
Great. Thank you. Commissioners, any other sharing of ideas? I just wanted to compliment, a couple of us, I know Nancy, I saw you there, got to see Commissioner Ziffer hard at work in his capacity as the first vice president of the Florida League of Cities, and a not so easy environment, negotiating with leaders over at the legislature, specifically with regard to House Bill 17, but also as it relates to CRAs. Just want to say we're exceedingly proud to have your voice in the mix. Thank you for your leadership.
All of you.
All right. We stand in adjournment.
Hello. How are you?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I know.